What is up, RotoGrinders? Rise and shine for the People's Show, the start of 3.5 hours nonstop NFL DFS conversation. It is week 7. The NFL just having kickoff right now in London. I believe it's the Patriots, Bobby Gomes Patriots. I'm sure he's going to be fully paying attention. Probably doesn't care about the Patriots today. Patriots taking on the Jags over there across the pond. 10-game slate on DK, 11-game slate on FanDuel. Of course, FanDuel does include tonight the Jets and the Steelers, the lowest total on the board. Some big boy totals for sure today. A lot of players I want to play. Tricky part is, wait for it. You live in the world of a salary cap, and finally, this is the week where it's finally caught up with us. Be it the sites like to raise players much more actively than they do the players that aren't doing well, their salaries. So like everybody's more expensive if you compare it to week 1, and even the guys that are injured and like injury fallout, they preemptively bump everybody else up. So I don't think you're going to like your lineups today. I'm curious what you guys have to say. The cheapies today absolutely stink, but the stuff that I'm doing or considering doing to make the plays actually work is kind of gross. Hopefully you guys can help me out. Do you agree with this assessment? This is TastefulTides Tim. Tim, of course, a 3-entry max, cash game specialist, single game specialist. Tim, am I being hyperbolic here, or do you agree? I think this is the tightest the cap has been all season, and it's tough. I hate the plays that I have to make stuff work right now.
And I think you said that to me last week, and I agree with you last week, and I agree with you this week. It seems to be getting increasingly more difficult as the weeks go by. Value seems, or it is, extremely, extremely thin. I ran 300 optimals using RG projections. I ran 300 optimals using the blitz. I ran sims, and it's just like the value pieces are just none of it really is like, oh yeah, I definitely want to play this guy. So it's definitely super, super tight. But this is I think this is a pretty awesome slate for GPPs, whether it be large field or small field. But it is kind of a difficult week for cash games, in my opinion, just because that value is it's just not great.
Bobby Gomes, former $1 million winner. Do you agree with this assessment? I don't like the direction we're going here. Hopefully they pump it down a little bit, but we always hit this around week 7, week 8. And they're just much more active, much more proactive as far as raising prices on players that are doing well. And if you stink, it's like, well, we'll dock them a little bit, but not nearly the same rates. And that this is kind of where we're at. Do you agree with that, Bobby? Do we like that? Because you're focusing on tournaments, and you're probably not clicking on a lot of guys. You're just running stuff, so it's easier just to hit. You don't have to actually click on these terrible, gross names. What's up, Bobby? Good morning.
What's up, Dean? Yeah, it's definitely a tighter cap. I do like the week from a GPP perspective. Definitely a tough week to play cash games, I would imagine. But yeah, it looks like a fun slate. I like when the pricing gets tighter, to be perfectly honest. You have to make decisions on guys like Juju Smith-Schuster or double tight end in your flex. And
that's what we're doing?
No. That's not what we're doing. I'm just saying, I feel like that's what's hitting projections. If you have the Sims for RG, we sell a Sims product. You can run those, and that can definitely help you out. So, yeah, a little plug there, but yeah, excited for this slate. I actually think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll dig into the Sims. As again, we're here for the next hour and a half or so. Do you want to say what's up to those hanging out in chat? Kindly hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, hit everything. Don't go anywhere. Get comfortable again. 3.5 hours until kickoff, and we got you covered. As far as actives and inactives, Cooper Kupp might be coming back today, and that's a later game. I don't know. I guess Whittington is somebody that will be affected by that as well. And you kind of mentioned it there, Tim. Colby Parkinson was another guy who was kind of popping up in some optimal stuff, and I don't feel great about that, but he would certainly look better if Kupp is not arriving. Of course, it's a good matchup for the Rams as well. Home favorites, 7-point favorites in the Dome against a Raiders team that's, waiting to hit that sim button. They're pretty much done with this season, trading off Devontae Adams. We had a couple trades, which we never really get in season. Adams going to the Jets in the Sunday night primetime game, and of course Cooper going to the Bills. Pretty interesting going forward. I don't know how much that affects the slate today, but
Kupp is unlikely to play.
Did that just break?
as of 7:30 this morning. So
okay,
yeah,
interesting. I thought he was on track to play. I guess something may have changed. Maybe it's like, well, we're playing against the Raiders, so I guess we don't need them.
He's out of projections too. So
I think they also have a Thursday game, so maybe that factored in too. That's got kind of give them a couple extra days. I think they play next Thursday, so maybe that was kind of part of the decision as well. But okay, but that's the thing. Like, these are the guys now. Are we excited about playing Jordan? Have you ran anything new now with the Cup getting kicked out? Has anything really changed? Have any of these Rams started to pop?
Oh yeah, I mean, Whittington and Parkinson are all over optimals. It's definitely I would max it at one of those guys, to be honest with you. I don't really want both because I think this is such an amazing Kyron spot. Like, we'll talk about that when we get the running back. But I mean, I think this is a game where Kyron's going to run the ball, like 25, 30 times. And so it's like, do I really want two Rams pass catchers in this game that I assume is going to be pretty slow paced? So I really only want to get to one of those guys. I would prefer Whittington over Parkinson, but I would really max it at one of those guys in my builds.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit of cash. Well, you kind of mentioned cash. We're talking about cash being kind of tricky today. Ideally, you want to play Jefferson at home versus Detroit. There are some really good games. It's just, how do you get to some of these? Over a 50 total in the dome there. Minnesota, Detroit looks pretty enticing. Carolina, Washington. I think Washington is the highest team total I've seen for any team this year at 30.5. Carolina Panthers this year, about 6 games they played, and they're minus 100 points. They've given up 100 more points than they've scored, which is by far the worst in the league. It's by the way, Robinson expected to play for Washington last I saw. Aaron Jones expected to play. Kenneth Walker is questionable. He got ill yesterday. I believe it's his birthday today, so I don't know if there is any sort of correlation to that. But Kenneth Walker is questionable. Hawkinson, there was thoughts he might come back this week. He's not coming back this week. Chubb is making his season debut. Juju Smith-Schuster, unless there's any sort of setback, he should be good to go as well. The one guy they didn't pump up is the one guy I don't want to play. It's like, he had a huge game coming back for Casey, and he's still really, really cheap. It's like, I don't want to play this guy, but I might now. We'll see. That's basically what we're watching. Russ is starting for Pittsburgh tonight. Was that Pickens that let us know? I like that they're trying to play coy, like it matters. Then again, that's just the game on FanDuel. 2 Monday night games upcoming. That's why we've lost the game, and of course, 2 teams on bye, and there's the Jacksonville New England game as well. You want to give me some thoughts here, Tim, as far as cash games? I guess one of the big questions is, do you force Jefferson in? Is that something you're landing on? Have you figured it out? Are you still kind of debating?
I mean, it really depends on what you're doing at quarterback. It's, I've narrowed it down to, I guess, 3 quarterbacks. I really want to play Jaden Daniels, obviously. Like, who doesn't want to play Jaden Daniels? He's 7,600. Best matchup on the entire board. Like you said, like a 30-point total at home against Carolina. I mean, absolutely just smash spot. So it's kind of tough to play Daniels and Jefferson. But it's incredibly easy to play Jefferson if you go down to like Geno Smith or Sam Darnold. I don't mind those. I would prefer Geno though. So really for me, I'm going to go all the way up to Daniels or go way down to Geno. So that's really what it depends on for me in cash games. If you're not playing Daniels, like, you basically have to play Jefferson. And then like, a lot of optimals, like Bobby was saying, they are showing tight end in the flex in cash games, and like in optimal builds. Same thing in Sims too. Like I'm getting 41% tight end in the flex. So I mean that's even simming out pretty well too. So I mean a lot of these builds are coming back with 2 RBs and tight end in the flex, because they want you to jam in Daniels and Jefferson in the same team. I think I think there might be better ways to build there, just because this running back position is so loaded, and if Daniels doesn't like hit his rushing upside, he might not pay off the $7,600 price tag. Like that's a ton. This game could blow out, and it might not necessarily be Daniels who does like all the scoring. Like it could end up being Robinson. It could be a couple touchdowns through the air, which is not ideal for Daniels' ceiling. Like you want him to get a couple rushing touchdowns. So, I mean, it's definitely tough. I don't really want to play a tight end in my flex and cash games. So I'm probably going to have to play Geno, play Jefferson, and then go a little bit more balanced. Because I don't want to play all of this really like what I consider kind of thin value. I don't want to play all of, Whittington, Juju, Alcantara, Parkinson, two twos coming up, and quite a few optimals as well. And again, it's like, how many of these Rams pass catchers do you want in your cash games? Like, I just don't think that's an optimal way of building.
Yeah, I ran an optimal too as well, and Parkinson and Kelsey are in the very first one, which is surprising. I like Kelsey fine, but that's. And then again, like the ugly names, Juju and Judy. I don't want to play any of this nonsense, but we're kind of sort of stuck to some degree. On the Daniels thing, I think it's an interesting. Again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody playing Daniels, but is Carolina going to have a pass rush to force Daniels to even move and scoot and get some rushing yards? Is somewhat of a concern for me, right? Like, is he going to be forced to scramble? It's not that I'm trying to discourage playing Daniels, but it's just kind of a thought. Like maybe there'll be some design stuff, but how much improvised stuff will be necessary? And also, what if they're ahead, which they should be ahead? Certainly Daniels is ideal. And like, it's always like I asked about Jefferson, but it's always like a 2v2 or a 3v3. It's kind of like, well, what about these? If you're playing Geno, then all of a sudden, then you might have the salary to open up to get to a Jefferson. But right now I'm seeing London being the Drake London for Atlanta. That's the other good game in the Dome. There's several good games, but that one's certainly popping as well. But yeah, and then there's Chuba Hubbard, which we'll talk about as far as running backs. Is like, as a general thought, as a general rule, Tim, I don't like playing like a big road dog that's kind of expensive at running back. Now I know he's probably going to catch a bunch of stuff. Eventually he's going to get replaced to some degree with Brooks. Like Brooks is I guess he's been activated, or like it's in the window. I don't know how all this stuff works, but he's not going to play today. But at some point, the star running back is going to be jumping in there and taking some away. So maybe Hubbard gets the reprieve, and his usage has been outstanding. But he's really expensive, and they're 7-point dogs here on the road. I know Washington's defense is vulnerable, but yeah. Do you want to touch on that as far as, I guess I want to bring Bobby in here as well as far as some general thoughts, some tournament thoughts, but I did want to get like an overview of cash. What is there anything else you want to say as far as cash, Tim? Anybody that you're 100% this player is in your cash team and like almost definitely does not get bumped out?
I'll give out 2 just because it kind of gives like people a path of what I'm thinking today. I'm going Geno at quarterback, and I'm going to go Justin Jefferson at wide receiver.
Okay,
not exactly hot takes, but I don't think I'm going to play Daniels in cash.
Yeah, I mean that's the 2v2 we're talking about. Like what you kind of you kind of hinted at as well. Bobby, you tend to whittle down your tournament pool as far as quarterbacks. You build around. There's 22 available on DK, 20 available on FanDuel. How many current quarterbacks are in your pool? You still kind of figuring it out? Where are we at right now?
I have 13, but I'm still kind of figuring it out.
That's a lot for you.
Actually, I've been playing more recently. For me, I think a lot of these like low-owned quarterbacks are pretty interesting. Definitely like both CJ Stroud and Jordan Love in the Houston-Green Bay game. And they're looking at like 1% ownership each, I would imagine. So definitely think that's an interesting way to build in tournaments. I feel like I'll be slightly under on Jaden Daniels. Same with Sam Darnold, playing both, but I think I'll be slightly under. I actually like both QBs on the other side of that game, whether it's Jared Goff. On the other side of both of those games, whether it's Jared Goff or Andy Dalton, I think those guys are somewhat interesting. Daniel Jones is someone who I think is probably the best cash game play at the quarterback position on the slate. going away from Daniels. I think that would allow you to not have to play a tight end in your flex, Tim, and cash, I would imagine. If you played Daniel Jones, I don't know if you were considering him or not. This is going to be pretty terrible to say, but Deshaun Watson is currently in my player pool. He's currently in my player pool. Yeah, he's terrible. But yeah, he's in my player pool. I was thinking just not even playing him and just playing like Njoku and then running it back with like Chase or Higgins, just in case like Jameis comes in and they keep it close. Because I don't think Watson's going to keep it close, so he'll probably eventually be an X for me.
You think Jameis comes in? Like, if they haven't replaced him yet, like why would they do it now?
How do you not? Like, they should have replaced him last week. They're going to have to. Yeah, a month ago. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I just think like at some point you have to give Jameis a look. But yeah, I kind of I don't like Elijah Moore or Jerry Jeudy, but I think Njoku is interesting. Like if you're playing him, I don't even think I'll be over the field on Njoku, but if I am playing him, I know he's being played as chalk. So to differentiate him, I'd probably play a guy like Chase because I feel like, I don't know, it's just a good way to differentiate a chalky tournament play. So maybe Watson just gets X'd at some point. Patrick Mahomes going to be playing in that San Fran game. I know people are going to be playing Kelsey. I just think a good way to play Kelsey is to play Mahomes. Just you're running out of salary really quick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's another tournament option, I would say. And Purdy's always a tournament option. My issue with Purdy is, and just in that game in general, is both teams are going to try to keep the game in front of them. So I don't know if there's real ceiling upside. But like I said, the games that I do think that there are ceiling upside is the one everyone knows, Minnesota and Detroit. The Green Bay-Houston game, which Cardi has in the Blitz, is a game fact. In terms of game factors, it's a pretty good spot. And then Seattle and Atlanta, I think that's another good one. Kirk Cousins, I think I'm going to have a good bit of. Geno Smith, I don't think – I see Geno Smith like moving up in projections, and I just don't want to play Geno Smith. Like I'd rather just play the ancillary pieces like Metcalf, like Kenneth Walker, JSN, Lockett. I just don't want to play Smith himself. So it'd probably be more Kirk Cousins for me. And like the Drake London stacks, which I think a lot of people are going to be going to anyways.
I did pull up the game level factors, the Blitz there for Cardi. Do you subscribe to the Blitz? And no team is projected to run more plays than Houston, almost 69, 68.9 if you want to get all technical. One play less is Seattle at 67.9, Atlanta 67.6 in the Dome, expected to play fast. Green Bay 67, Washington 66, Detroit 66. Those are the teams in the green. And just going to pick a Tennessee 60. They're the lowest one. Buffalo 61. Buffalo, Tennessee expected to play pretty slow there. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but those 8 or 9 plays certainly matter. By the way, Rudolph is now quarterbacking for Tennessee. If you guys missed it, there's a lot of cheap guys, Bobby, as far as quarterbacks, and that's one way to open stuff up. And that's one thing I'm considering. I've not got to the Watson thing. I've heard several people talk about Watson this week, and I can't get there. Although I do like Njoku a little bit. I mean, theoretically, the absence of Cooper, it should open up some stuff. Efficiency probably not going to be there. And there's a couple other ugly ones. I saw somebody in the chat say they'd rather play O'Connell. I mean, they're without Myers, they're without Adams. So, you know exactly where I thought it might go to Tucker last week. It didn't. He put up a 0, got as many fantasy points as either one as you guys did or myself. That was brutal. If you had too much Tucker, that was me. And that's kind of my point. He's still not that cheap. He's cheap, but he should be cheaper probably. Bowers, though, looks spectacular. But of course, you got to pay for him as far as tight ends. But that seems like the ready-made pairing. Or if you just want to run, Bowers by himself, if you're playing some Rams, that's a pretty good run back as well. But Jones, you mentioned, I think Huntley is kind of interesting. I don't know if that's bonkers or not. I just kind of told myself the story. Good matchup in Indiana against the Colts on the turf. A bye. You figure they're doing something in the bye. They're trying to figure some stuff out. It's expected, kind of like, that Tua's going to come back next week. This is his last chance to put out some good tape and maybe get his next chance, his next contract. And think he's going to want to show. And I thought he was all right. He showed some moments before we saw him with Miami that, he just wasn't really ready when they threw him out there. So I kind of talked myself into him being, and he's got legs. I'm always into the quarterback with legs, and Hill's cheaper than he's ever been. One of those guys probably should be cheaper if you're looking at the stats, but it's gross. But I'm willing to play him. Is he in your pool, Bobby? I'm curious. Is Huntley in there? Did he crack the top 13, top 12 or so?
He didn't crack it currently. No, he's not in there.
Did I convince you in any way? Probably not.
No. I just I'm actually a Tyler Huntley guy. I wish he would play well. It's just I don't know.
Why wouldn't you play him this week?
You can make a case for playing him with Tyreek if I'm playing him. There's no other way about it.
Yeah,
but currently
I laddered him.
He's not in my pool.
It's just really hard to find salary. It's just kind of like that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
I had Richardson in my pool earlier in the week. Liked him with Josh Downs. Josh Downs was ruled in. Guess you can pair him with Alec Pierce as well. My one issue is maybe they scale back his running just because of the injuries that he sustained. I thought he was somewhat interesting, but he's not currently in my pool. But just throwing it out there for a QB in that game.
Patriots up 7-0. By the way, May threw a touchdown to Hasty. I don't know. Is anybody in the showdown streets as far as this game, Patriots and Jags, or do we stay away?
We need a Demario Douglas touchdown, Dean. That's what we need.
He does have 2 catches for 14 yards. I did bet his over on yards. So, all right, there we go. We got something to monitor. And this is it for the Jags, right? If they lose to the Patriots, it's got to be. I mean, it's already it. I guess it's it for their coach, I imagine.
I think Doug Peterson gets such a pass for being an awful coach because he beat Belichick in a Super Bowl 5 years ago, and it was really Frank Reich.
It buys you 5 years. This is the time.
It buys you 5 years. Yeah, it buys you 5 years.
Here's the expiration date, I suppose. Tim, did I talk you into any? Who's the grossest quarterback you're considering? Because you're only making 3 or 4 lineups or something like that, Tim?
Yeah, I'm making 3 today. I don't mind Bobby's calling Daniel Jones. I wouldn't play him in cash games, but I mean they do have design runs for him. So I wouldn't mind Daniel Jones. I'm not playing Deshaun Watson. I don't mind the Andy Dalton take either. I think he would be decent, a decent play in a 3-max setting. But I think Dalton is probably the cheapest I would go. It would be Andy Dalton. Yeah. I wouldn't go anywhere below Andy Dalton.
Deontay Johnson expected to play, by the way. Go ahead, Bobby.
I just feel like I should just X Deshaun Watson. There's no reason to play him. There's no Tim just talked me into it. The lowest I'm going is Dalton.
Yeah. Who's in your pool for Carolina? Do you extend it? So one of the gross plays that I'm considering is Jalen Coker, who's still minimum 3K. He's 4-2 on FanDuel. It looks like he's almost definitely jumped Mingo. It looks like he's getting some run out there. He's getting some burn, and he's 3K, and he opens some stuff up. Sanders also is one of your cheaper tight end options this week. Dalton, you got to expect her to be coming back here. 10-point dogs here, 8.5-point dogs. This is just, you can't get any cheaper than 3K, and I'm looking to save salary someplace, Bobby, and Jalen Coker is somebody that's in my pool currently.
Coker is also in my pool, Dean, but I wouldn't have known it if you didn't say his name. I had no idea who he was. I will say
Go ahead.
Xavier Legette, I love for a touchdown this week at 51.
Oh, look at that. Are we in the prop streets, or just is that as a prop bet, or just a general thought? You think Legette's going to get in the box?
I think he gets in the box. I think I may prefer Legette to Deontay. No, I think I would rather Deontay, but I think Legette for the 5,100, he does have some ceiling, and we're starved for value in ceiling on the slate. So a guy like Legette makes a good bit of sense.
I'm going to let this go. I'm not going to harp on it. I'll stop. I'm sure it's annoying, but this Legette should be 4K, 5-1. It's barely even a value play. Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, but that's the total context of the slate, that's pretty much the problem you're running into outside of a few plays. So.
No, I agree with you. I agree, but it's just like he's one of the guys. Like he should not be 5-1. Noah Brown on the other side, 4K is also like again in the pool. I'm getting trolled. Not really trolled, but Don Yeezy in chat is reminding me that he did beat me last week in the RotoGrinders contest. Congratulations! Yes, I took a pummeling. I think Tim got me too. So I started off the season undefeated, and Tim, I'm sure that of all the contests you played last week or 2 weeks ago, that nothing was more riveting than you can't put a price on it. Beating
Dean, some of us are still undefeated. So just want
to look at you with the victory lap. Yeah. What does 6-0 get you in season long though? You're gonna get knocked out in the first round.
I'm just saying some of us are still undefeated. So
yeah. Other quarterbacks that are worth noting. Yeah, I do agree with your thought on Richardson, Bobby. But I think if he's just gonna instinctually, he just plays football the way he plays football. Eventually, like he leaves 30% of his games or 40% of his games, small sample size, due to injuries. So maybe he should probably try to simmer half measures. Does that ever work out? This is our quarterback pool, and spending up on a guy like Jalen Hurts, that's just not going to happen. People are just not going to pay him. Josh Allen, it's just not going to happen. Those are guys that could theoretically break the slate. They can get in the box 2 times. Although, are we pushing it on the one with Barkley against the Giants? What is it? Do we have a players coach there in Philly? And there's all sorts of rumblings about the coach there in Philly. But I think they make an exception. I think they find a way. But what do you think, Bobby? We're at the 1 yard line, half yard line. Is it just going to be a classic tush push?
Narratives. This is a good week to buy into narratives. That's all I'll say.
It feels like a real one. I know sometimes you try to manufacture them, but I just think that they're going to at least give Barkley one crack at it if they're at the 1 or so.
Sirianni's the biggest hardo coach too. He cares about this. You just know. I don't know. Barkley to me seems like a really good play. Kenneth Walker birthday narrative. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, but is he playing? He was. Did they say what kind of illness? They just said he was ill. That's all I got. Have we had an update as far as Walker? And then how they preemptively bump everybody up. I haven't even looked to see how expensive is Charbonnet. 5.3. It's kind of a discount, but there's been no update, right, Tim? As far as Walker, as far as we know, he's still questionable with his illness. Yes.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. If he somehow sits, though, I assume Charbonnet would pop and be hitting every single cash lineup. Is that fair to say, Tim?
Say again, Charbonnet.
If Walker somehow sits, Charbonnet would just hit every single cash lineup, right?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's what I figure. Not that it's this massive discount, but it's good enough.
I mean, 5,300 at running back for this slate in that game. If Walker were to sit, I mean that's pretty nice. I know he's not a free square, but I mean that would go a long way on the slate for value.
All right. Anything else we should say as far as quarterbacks? Let's see. Oh, there was a general question in Bobby in the chat. Not that's a good. They're asking Bobby specifically. Now I'm trying to find it. GR Sauce Bobby was saying in large field DK GPPs, 18% ownership. If that's what it is for Jefferson. Is that where we currently have him? Let's just say that, hypothetically. Is that considered chalk? How do you define this stuff, right? And I know Blender would be screaming at us. It's not players, it's lineups. And you can play chalky players as long as your lineup is not very chalky and whatever. But what is your threshold for on a 10-game slate receiver? Does it matter as far as the position? I guess it matters because quarterbacks, 18% would be monster chalk, right? For quarterbacks, just the way that is generally divvied up. But is that chalk to you, Bobby? 18% as a ownership number?
20% is usually the difference. I just think Jefferson's going to come. Where do we have Jefferson currently projected for ownership? I feel like he's going to get over 20, correct?
17% large field. But this stuff can change, obviously.
Yeah. In higher stake stuff, he'll definitely be over 20, I would imagine. Yeah, I think I was of the opinion talking through the Tournament Take show that I was going to fade Jefferson yesterday. And now he's definitely back in my pool. I'm trying to work through it. I think currently I might be slightly under on Jefferson. I do think that there are some interesting receiver options, even in the same game, right? Like there's Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's Jordan Addison, Tyreek Hill we talked about on the fast track, I think makes sense. I think Jamar Chase makes a ton of sense. It's just like pivots off of the Jefferson price tag. So I think I'll be slightly under and just have a little bit more exposure to those guys. AJ Brown's another one that I think you could possibly go away from Jefferson with. Malik Neighbors at 7,500. Like I think Malik's a fantastic play on the slate. So there are a lot of options. So that's why in larger field stuff, I don't know if it really makes a ton of sense to be too above the field on Jefferson. And currently I'm coming in under for that reason.
We currently have London, the most popular receiver on DK, around 20%. And I think that's correct. I think he's the one, you get the ceiling and you don't have to fully pay for it. I wouldn't argue it's the same ceiling as a guy like Jefferson, but pretty good ceiling, good matchup at 6'9". The price is actually pretty good in him too. And then the two cheapies, Juju Smith-Schuster, 19%, and Trey Tucker at 18%. And Tucker, I guess, is the number one wide receiver. Like, Bowers is going to be the number one target for the Raiders today. Again, they traded away Adams, and there's no Myers. It's really, I don't know. I did see this Alex Bachman. He was he's making his debut in the NFL. Like he's something like it's like the longest guy ever. They've been in the practice squad so long or whatever. So good for him for sticking around and not giving up. But he did get called up for the Raiders. I don't know if he's playing or not. He's like their fourth or fifth receiver, but shout out to him. All right.
It's like Rudy.
Well, I mean, Rudy was offsides and he went out there and he played one play when the game was already over. And, this is a professional football team, but I hear what you're saying. And if you ask Joe Montana, the whole Rudy thing it was all made up. Based on a true story, there's a guy who walked on Notre Dame. The rest is kind of made up. Good movie, but it's a lot of it's nonsense. Not to kill, I don't know if you're a big Rudy guy, but and he made a career and a life out of it. He's like a speaker and stuff, but good for him. But a lot of it's nonsense, according to those people that were there. Tim, you got a Rudy take? I see Tim.
I mean, you just seem so dead set on your take, Dean. I don't want to ruin it for you. So
it's not a take. It's just this is what the people who were there say.
I'm just saying. I really like the movie, Dean. That's all I want to say. I thought it was a great movie.
Like Interstellar was a good movie too, and that wasn't true. Like
how do you know Interstellar's not true?
Yeah, like it could be in a different dimension, Dean. Interstellar.
There is this weird noise coming from these books. I always want. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. So, spoiler alert, I suppose. But it's a good movie, sure. But again,
isn't the past, future, and the present all happening at one time?
Here we go. Nice work, Dean.
I feel like we just stepped into a Matrix sequel or something. This is all right. Let's get this show back on track. Anything else we'd say as far as quarterbacks that's worth noting, worth pointing out? I see a lot of names being thrown out, and we're going to kind of go on through. But actually, let's see what the Sims are saying quarterback-wise. If you can go ahead. I know you kind of hinted at them, Tim. And I ran them before the show, but I want to rerun them. And I know producer Devin was showing them off as well. Is there anything we can learn, anything we're seeing right now from the Sims, Tim, as far as quarterbacks that gives you second thought, or it's like, oh, well, I wasn't thinking about that person, or that's kind of surprising that so-and-so is, so far behind as far as, ownership and expectancy being in the optimal lineup?
I'm getting to a lot more Brock Purdy than I thought would be. In what I ran, I see what Devin ran got 7% Purdy. I'm liking that Geno's still simming well because I really like him today. I'm thinking about putting him in 2 out of my 3 and my 3 max lineup and my cash game lineup. So I'm really, really hoping that Geno does well today. Definitely, I thought that there would be more like Sam Darnold, more Jared Goff, because I just think that game has a real upside. And then just as like a unique way to play Jaden Daniels, what I've seen just like looking through the 150 that I made, I'm seeing a lot of Jaden Daniels doubles, which I was not really considering because, you obviously want him to get some rushing yards to hit a ceiling, but like getting to some Daniels, McLaurin, Noah Brown stacks. I think that's kind of interesting. I've heard Noah Brown being talked about across the industry as a cheaper way to play Jaden Daniels. I really don't have a problem with that, especially if he's only going to be, say, around 5-6%. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that I saw in the Sims. I know we're talking about quarterback, but I saw a lot of Aaron Jones also, which I kind of was like expecting that to get more from like the passing attack on both sides of that game. But Aaron Jones, super interesting. And running back, we didn't really talk about running back, but like running back is so loaded. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go about playing running back position today.
Yeah, and Jones is kind of an interesting counter to Jefferson. Jefferson is the place people are going to want to go first. I thought he might have been a little bit more hurt than being let on because they traded for Cam Akers. But I guess it's insurance, I suppose, right? But Jones was questionable, but now he's expected to play today. They have Chandler as well, and I guess they didn't cost him anything, probably like a 6th or a 7th or something like that. Did you look at, Tim, are you looking at all as far as the optimal versus the projected ownership as far as quarterbacks? Because it's just interesting to see. And a lot of this is just like kind of the inverse of ownership sometimes, not always, but that's kind of like a pattern you see. Like Jaden Daniels is the lowest rated when it comes to optimal versus projected ownership because he's going to get some ownership. Darnold right there as well is kind of the cheap guy. And then Bobby's guy all the way up top as far as the one projecting the best when it comes to optimal versus projected ownership is actually Daniel Jones. Just thought that was interesting. And Stafford, another one of those guys that's just not a fun roster, but it seems like a good spot today. And he's got cheap players, and we need cheap.
I think that's why he's hitting it because they're cheap, right? Like he's hitting it. Yeah. Do we love Stafford? Better be doubling him.
You don't love him, but like you might love what he and his stack gets you around it, right? Is that a better way of saying it?
Yeah.
He gets you enough, and now you open up salary for the players that can really break the slate. Jones, Stafford, Goff, Dalton are the first 4. Mahomes even is pretty positive, and he's just not going to get rostered, I don't think. But like Kelsey, Juju, and you got to think they drew up a couple gadget plays for Worthy. You got to figure. You don't know if it's going to work or not, but try to like make good use of his speed. Anything else here as far as quarterbacks? I'm trying to see if anybody else has any quarterback thoughts. Jim says I'm playing 11 quarterbacks today. Is that too many? Doesn't sound like it. Bobby, you're probably going to whittle yours down a little bit.
Depends on how many lineups they're making.
He's making 11 lineups. He didn't know. He didn't say. I don't know. I'm just, I don't know if he's running 150 or not, but running 11 quarterbacks, and I think I don't run 150, but Bobby, you're in those lanes. And that's something you would consider doing, right? You'd be fine theoretically running 11 today.
If I was making 11 lineups, I'd probably whittle it down.
No, 77. He did clarify it's 77.
Oh yeah, no, he's fine with 11.
Yeah. All right. We did show off a little bit, give you guys a taste of, showing off the Sims and our newest product, Combo Light, if you're not aware. Gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of other tools. Some competitors would charge hundreds for their sim products. Combo Light is actually less than $40, $39 and change. It includes Sim Labs, lineup building tool, plus content from some of your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Light, it does not limit you just to NFL. It includes the 4 majors, MLB, NFL, NBA, right around the corner. But if you guys are not aware, we're every single day. The grind is going to pick back up if you're hanging out with us for baseball, basketball. Tuesday night is the opener. I think it's just a 2-game slate on Tuesday night. I would imagine we have a showdown, or I guess not a showdown, but a show for it. But this is why you hit the like. This is why you subscribe, because we're going to be hammering out basketball in a big way starting next week. Also PGA. But are you insulted by that, Tim, that hockey is not considered? Or whoever wrote this, The 4 most popular sports: MLB, NFL, NBA, PGA. I guess it's just true, right? I think PGA is more popular. Yeah,
it's true. Out of those 4, for sure.
Yeah, well,
we live in the basement, Dean. We're basement dwellers.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're gonna lose. So some people just play hockey until the bridge of NBA. So you might lose even a few more hockey people, and then all of a sudden, it's NBA All-Star break. It's hockey. Yeah, let's try this out. And then you just can't wait. You're salivating to devour the fresh meat, the fish that have no clue what they're doing, right? But
yeah, Mr. Gerg knows hockey DFS is way better than NBA. Never thought I would say that.
It's 10 times better. That's what people don't really understand is how much better it actually is.
I know.
NBA is literally the worst DFS sport there is, in my opinion.
Yeah. Hockey's so much better than NBA. It's not even close. Yeah. But I understand.
It's more like the time that you just have to dedicate to it.
Yeah.
That is if you want to make that argument, that's a good argument because, hockey, generally speaking, you're not going to have a bunch of scratches. If you have them, you generally know who they are. And it's not this massive, it's going to change up lines and all that. But NBA, it's 240 minutes. It's all about the minutes. And if one player is out or 2 players are out and all of a sudden 70 minutes are opened up, the slate is flipped on its head and there's this domino effect. And yes, so I do agree with that argument, Bobby. I like them both, so I'm not going to, it's like choosing your kids or your pets, right? But I
might be a better sweat too.
Say it again.
It might be a better sweat too.
It's a way better sweat.
Yeah,
it's a gut punch though. Like that one goal can just really demolish you though, like by the wrong guy.
That's why it's the best. I mean, it's just like
NBA is like a slow bleed. It's just like just every basket going down or up. But there you go. The chat is touting hockey as well, and do hang out with in the Discord channel. The hockey Discord channel is spectacular. Tim is there. 23 hours of the 24? Is that correct? Give or take.
Pretty close.
There you go. Tim's always there. Moneyball's in there as well. Dropping the lines, any sort of updates. You guys do an awesome job in the Discord channel, which is free, by the way. You do not need to be an RG premium member, just a regular RG member. Yeah, the empty net goals, those are a killer too. They don't work in your favor. Mr. Gerg's talking about there in chat. Okay. Did want to mention, by the way, the hottest, newest DFS site, Splash Sports. Not aware, Splash is leading in innovation, peer-to-peer fantasy and gaming contests, and they are excited to announce the arrival of their new Quick Picks pick'em game. Just like other pick'em games, you're selecting more or less around different stat and fantasy categories, but unlike other peer-to-peer games, Splash is being more transparent on payouts than other sites. They include the best payouts on 12x, 6x versus 10 and 5 of other sites on 4 and 3 pick entries. Also, 33% of groups are won by users who don't get a perfect slip, which means that 3 out of 4 picks are often winning 12x payouts on Splash. Additionally, Splash, they're still running lots of Survivor Revival tournaments. Man, my Survivor contests are long gone, as well as Pick'em and Fantasy Tier contests. Join the community games at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. We do have a promo code for you as well, promo code ROTO10. Upon signing up, you get $10, $10 bonus. For a limited time, play $20 in Quick Picks, and you get yourself an additional $10 bonus. Also, exclusively for those that use that promo code ROTO10, you'll get an additional $20 in credits when you play $50 in entries by the end of October. Got about 11 days for that. Check out Splash Sports today. Be sure to use promo code ROTO10 to get the best bonuses available. And with that, even more about Splash Sports, here is the great Head Chopper.
What up, everybody? Chop here talking about Splash Sports. More Survivor Revival pools going on this week. Let's start with the $50 entry fee. Splash NFL 50K Survivor Revival. You can get in that one for $50. Just advance, win in advance. If that price point's a little bit too much for you, check out the $20 entry fee on the RotoGrinders 10K NFL Survivor Revival. Should be fun. Now let's get to the pick. The Bills and the Commanders this week are the two heaviest favorites on the board, so I'm going to avoid those and hopefully other people get booby trapped there. Meanwhile, I'm going to take the Rams at home against the Raiders. The Rams coming off of a bye week. Should be good to go. Until next week, I'm Chop. Good luck. Be back later.
All right. Shout out to Chop. Let's go ahead and open up some running backs. Let's talk about RBs. I see some people asking about some running backs in the chat, asking for the Max Profits wants a cheap running back on FanDuel. Any ideas?
I think I wouldn't go below Chase Brown, who I really like today. He's 6,500 on FanDuel. Yeah,
wouldn't go below it.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really seeing anyone. I mean, I'm not going to play. I don't want people to play Trey Sermon. I guess maybe Tyler Algier.
That's who I was thinking. I thought he could.
Okay.
Again, it's just I don't love it, but it's a good game environment. I think he gets enough touches.
Yeah. So I guess if you really need to go low, I guess it would be Tyler Algier. But I do like Chase Brown quite a bit on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Yeah.
Algier is 5'8" on FanDuel. That's probably the cheapest I would go. I would prefer him over Sermon as well. Just think he's better in better game environment, All right. Give us your thoughts here, Bobby, as far as running backs. We kind of talked about some already. It is pretty loaded. I'm assuming as of right now, we'll see if things change. I'm assuming that Kenny Walker is good to go. He's going to be playing some football today, despite being ill yesterday. I saw, unless something changed, I hate the game environment, but I saw one of the beats talk about, there's a very real chance that Tennessee only dresses 2 running backs, which you don't see very often. It's probably just going to be Pollard and Chestnut. Maybe. It looks like we're projecting that maybe Josh Kelly, who I didn't know was on Tennessee. That's the guy that used to play for the Chargers, I think, who was terrible when he was chalky. Maybe he's available, but, terrible matchup, obviously, just a 16-team total. Mason Rudolph, on the road. It's not a good setup, but volume-wise, Pollard at least looks pretty interesting. I think he's kind of sort of somewhat in the cash game conversation. We love Kyron. Awesome setup there. Big-time favorite at home against the Raiders. You just got to pay for him. He's expensive. Chuba, same deal. The role is spectacular, but kind of a blowout environment, but also he catches passes too. So he's sort of blowout proof. Bobby, who do you want to open up as far as running backs? Where do we want to bring the conversation?
So you brought it to Tony Pollard. I think he's going to be extremely chalky, but it isn't the greatest matchup. And I'm going to be very under the field on Pollard currently. My favorite running back, Chuba Hubbard, in that Washington and Carolina game. Chuba's just been so good. He's game script proof pretty much. Really like Chuba. Kenneth Walker would be my second favorite. Birthday narrative. I have to hop on the birthday narrative, Dean. So I'm going to go with Kenny Walker. Chase Brown versus the Cleveland Browns that are basically ready to just, every other week, I see they pan to Cleveland on Red Zone and the fans have the paper bags over their heads. And we like the game script for Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown's evolving into the guy in Cincinnati. So I'm fine with him. Josh Jacobs is another one that I like that might be a little around 10% owned in that Green Bay Houston game. Houston's out a couple linebackers too, I'm pretty positive. So I don't know if that could benefit Jacobs in the run game. I'm going to be under on Kyron. I'm going to take it. I like Joe Mixon on the other side of Josh Jacobs. I know you're paying a premium for him, but if that game stays close last week, Mixon has 40 points. And Bobby Slowick seems to really like using Mixon, taking Nico Collins out. So that's one less mouth to feed. I like Mixon a good bit today. Aaron Jones is going to hit a lot of stuff for people. I don't like to play Aaron Jones when he's coming off of an injury. So he's someone I'm taking a lower than the field stance on. I'm going to be playing some Trey Sermon for the idea that I just think I know Richardson's going to want to run the ball, but Miami's not a great defense. And if they do kind of scale him back, Sermon would be the beneficiary, or Goodson. I'm currently leaning Sermon. James Cook would be the running back that I would take in that Buffalo Tennessee game. Especially, do we have confirmation on Ray Davis, like what his health is currently? Because if Ray Davis is out, I'm going to boost my James Cook projection.
I'm looking right now. Last I saw, he's questionable, and I don't think we have an update on that, but that is worth noting. They have, what's his name? The other guy that's kind of a pass catcher, Ty Johnson. He's lurking as well. But, yeah, it's a good setup for Cook as a monster home favorite here. I like that call. He's not going to be owned at all. One of my, I think, bolder fades today. I'm not married to it just yet. But I play a lot of single entry, 3-entry stuff like Tim. And right now, our most popular running back, we'll get a new batch of ownership, Tim. 34% Hubbard. The next guy is 21% Pollard. And we know how this goes in single entry, 3-entry max. Like Hubbard's going to be 40% in single entry contests, maybe 45. I think I'm not going to play Hubbard in my main single entry contest. I understand like the role is awesome, but he's a 10-point dog on the road, and I know he catches the ball when they're down. I'm trying to find something that's one way to be different, I think, in this slate. And
is the rookie there for them now?
No, not yet. He's in the window, whatever they call it, and he probably pops up next week. We'll see. And maybe they just run Hubbard to the ground until Brooks comes up, right?
See, that's what I think they're going to be doing. I think he's pretty much like game script proof. I don't think it's going to matter.
Proof, Dean. Like, why does it matter?
I'm just thinking like he's going to be 50% owned in single entry stuff.
Pollard's the fade, dude. I'm telling you, 100%. Like
maybe they both are.
What'd you say?
Maybe they both are.
That is true. Maybe they could.
Continue your thought. I mean to cut you off, but I don't disagree with they're both. The big argument is volume. Volume for both those guys should be great.
So this is hypothetical, obviously, but what if Buffalo blows this Tennessee team out with Mason Rudolph starting?
I don't think that matters. I think Pollard's game script proof also.
Ooh,
they're Julius not. Chestnut? I mean, Julius Chestnut. I mean, say Tennessee is down 21 points in the third quarter. I still think it's going to be Pollard getting the majority of the work. It's not going to be Chestnut. We have who was it? Kelly projected for 0.13 rush attempts. Like he's not going to get any work at all. So I mean, people can do whatever they want. I mean, obviously these are two very, very high leverage situations, but in cash games, I just want to talk cash games real quick. I mean, you're going to be playing Hubbard. I think you should be playing Pollard as well, just because I'm not concerned about game script for either one of these guys. I do understand what Dean is saying and what Bobby's saying in terms of projected ownerships in GPPs, though. I mean, these are pretty big decisions, but I'm not worried about blowouts. That's not going to factor into my decision about whether or not I play these two guys in single entry or 3 max. It's really just about, ownership and trying to get leverage somewhere else because this running back position is really, really strong today.
So in saying that, like Chase Brown is 400 less than Pollard, Jacobs is 100 more. To me, those just stand out as better plays from a tournament perspective, rather than playing Pollard in ownership.
Yeah, I really liked your Joe Mixon call. That's like.
But Mixon, we're getting up to 7,200 with Mixon, right?
True. No, I know. Yeah, no, I agree. I honestly, Bobby, in that price range, I think it's Brian Robinson
or B-Rob. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would play B-Rob if I was looking to get, a price point pivot away from Hubbard or Pollard. I'd play B-Rob. Let's say, Washington is up 3 touchdowns and they just, pound the rock with B-Rob and Jaden Daniels really does not pay off that $7,600 price tag. And B-Rob goes for 102 touchdowns. Like he's going to end up crushing at least one of Hubbard or Pollard. So I think
Tim, we got to clarify who B-Rob is because I think you guys there's Bijan Robinson and there's Brian Robinson.
Sorry,
B-Rob stack? Yeah.
We're talking about Brian Robinson here.
Okay. Yeah. I think technically Bijan is B-Rob. I think.
Okay. All right. Well, bro. Yeah. All right. Well.
I think.
Well.
I thought Bijan was Bijan.
See, this is what happens when I follow Bobby blindly. This is what happens. So, anyway, I think Brian Robinson is the tournament pivot away from Hubbard or Pollard.
Bobby, do we know for sure who is technically B-Rob? Because I don't know.
It's Brian Robinson. It's Brian Robinson. Bijan Robinson is Bijan. They just call him Bijan. That's his. It's like Mike, Michael Jordan, Mike. But he's obviously not to that level. But that's like
this is the clarity. B-Rob is Brian and Bijan is Bijan. There you go. All right.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I just thought we needed some clarity on that. Or we could just play them both. But I do have that question for you, Tim. I got the Magic 8 Ball. I got the Mr. Predicto. I don't have the Gray Sports Almanac next to me. It's not within arm's reach. But if I tell you, Tim, in your head that your single entry contest, that Hubbard's going to be 45% owned, no more, no less, are you playing it? Probably is. That's about right.
I know. I mean, like I'm playing the 200 and like I don't know, a few of those $100 spies, and I'm just thinking like how high owned does he get in those spies? If we have him projected for 35% in smaller dollar large field tournaments, I mean maybe he gets all the way up to 50, Dean.
He might.
I know. And that's pretty terrifying. It's a big
number.
Yeah. I mean, ownership, I think, is going to spread out a little bit, though. I mean, I think we're a little low on Walker. I know a lot of people are going to want to play Kyron. So yeah, I don't know. If I knew when we flipped over the cards, he was going to be 50 in those single entry tournaments, I guess I would fade him.
You wouldn't be shocked if it's 50.
No,
you wouldn't be shocked, right?
No, I wouldn't be.
Who's going to be 50? You said Pollard in single field?
No, we're talking Hubbard. Specifically, single entry. We think Chuba is going to be 50% owned or close to it in single entry stuff. And a lot of people just throw their cash lineup in there, and he's in everybody's cash lineup. And there's a lot of good pivots, right? Achane, if you want to get in on Miami, like Hill is really cheap. Was cheap for his, relatively speaking, and he's not going to be that owned. Achane coming back from his concussion, 7%. And like in theory, this guy has got a monster upside. I know it's been a disastrous season for the Dolphins, but it is a good spot for him, Bobby. I'm looking at ownership. Gibbs is around 10%. You get a part of that really appealing game there against Minnesota. Montgomery, 4%. Probably not the way you want to go necessarily on paper, but with the running backs, but certainly they're both fine. They should both probably be in the pool. You mentioned Cook coming in at 5 or 6% currently. We'll get a new batch soon enough. And then Barkley at 5, Kieran at 20. But I just think that I'm going to try to get a different shuffle away from Hubbard. And again, there's no penalty. You don't have to pay more. If you finish dead last in a contest, they don't come back at you and say, listen, this was so embarrassing. You got to fork over another $100. Like you just lose. Losing is losing, and that's that. There's no consolation prize. There's no, so I'm okay.
I do want to touch on that Saquon Kyron situation. We got Kyron at 20% and Saquon at 5%. If you're building out, I don't know, a few teams, I would spend that extra $100 on Barkley. Like we talked about that, narrative street. Like, could that be real? Like in giant, at New York. I think that there could be some real. I don't play revenge stuff ever. Like but this is definitely the time to do it. And I really don't think he's going to be high owned at all. And they might just feed him the rock. And and like you said, Dean, like, are they going to go tush push right away? Probably not. They're probably going to try to give Barkley a chance to get pay dirt. So I really like Barkley today in tournaments. I'm probably going to put him in one of my 3 teams.
What about Achane as a pivot off both?
Yeah, he's interesting.
Honestly, I don't.
We can do this all day. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
No. Hey, listen. I mean, we know that he's got a massive ceiling, like anytime he's on the field, but I just don't have any faith in Miami. I just can't. I just, like we're going to talk about wide receivers, but I mean, we saw how cheap those Miami wide receivers are, and it's like hard not to click on Hill or Waddle at those price tags. But like, I just don't have any faith in the quarterback. So it's just, I just don't have faith in that entire offense. So I'm not going to play him. I'd much rather just go Brian Robinson right around that same price tag. I'd almost prefer like Jahmyr Gibbs also over him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have at least one Huntley to Hill lineup. I've talked myself into it. Again, this is essentially his last start. They're coming back from the bye. They have a great setup here in Indy on the turf. He can scoot as well. It can fall flat in his face and like whatever. If I lose, I lose. No big deal. But I think it's just one. I'm just trying to think if I need any run backs as far as the Indy side, and I don't really want to play Sermon. Guess Downs is fine. Pittman, whatever. They're all sort of fine, but I think I might just play at least one Huntley and Hill. I don't make a ton of lineups. Anybody?
I really want to play. I really want to play Hill as a one-off, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you like Hill as a one-off, and like we're looking to save salary, he kind of needs his quarterback to get him there to some degree. And
but I mean, at his price tag though, like he could get like 3 receptions for 120 yards and a TD, right? And that doesn't mean Huntley's going to get there. So I kind of prefer Hill just as a one-off, but that's just my opinion.
I'm authentic in the chat. Is Chuba good leverage from Robinson? Chuba is
it's the other way around
of leverage.
Yeah.
He's going to be so heavily owned that is Deontay Johnson going to get rostered much? I'm trying to think. Like we're seeing a 12% or so or something like that. I guess that's the leverage spot on Carolina if there was one. But yeah, that would be in no way is Chuba leverage, just to be clear. Anybody else that we should sort of focus on as far as running backs? Bobby, is there somebody you have that's like well above current ownership or well below current ownership when it comes to your running backs?
I like Chase Brown and Mixon a good bit. Those would be the main ones.
Do you have any Jordan Mason, Bobby?
Nobody knows today.
No, very little. Very little.
Did you guys see what they, DK proactively, what they made Gorendo 6'6" in case Mason didn't play? Like, what are we doing here?
They're really going after it this year.
Uh-huh. Like he's more expensive than Hubbard, than Jacobs, than B-Rob. It's even if Gorendo was the number one guy, he still wouldn't be, really in my pool, I don't think. That's a weird game, right, Bobby? Like the KC San Fran game, 47 total, give or take. Premium quarterback and Mahomes, clear path theoretically for Kelsey. I know he's old, but like he's kind of got to step it up. There's Worthy and there's Juju. Everybody's healthy for San Fran outside of CMC as far as the pass catcher, so it's always tough to figure out. It's just weird that game's going to get mostly ignored, right? And I don't want to say that's right, but I think that's I understand. I understand why it's going to be mostly ignored. That's one of the 3 games in the late window, by the way. The breakdown today is 7-3, 7-3-1 on FanDuel. Vegas, Rams, Carolina, Washington, KC, San Fran. So don't mind backloading a little bit too. There's certainly some pivots that can be made. Do we agree, Bobby, that like the Kansas City, San Fran, it's probably not going to be a lot owned? Is that correct? That it's not going to be very popular?
So yeah, it's not going to be very popular. I do think Purdy and Patrick Mahomes are in play. I will say when I'm looking at our sim model, Travis Kelce only hits I ran it. I did 150. I got 12 teams with Purdy. Yeah. Kelce run back with Purdy only hits it 1 time.
Interesting.
Oh no,
Worthy? Any Worthy?
No, twice. Sorry, it hits it twice. No, it's more Juju Smith-Schuster and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. We'll get there as far as receiver. I really don't want to click Juju. And there was what were they saying? He had like hamstring what was the term they were using? He had something. He's historically a fragile player.
You talk about Juju?
Yeah. What was the injury they gave? They say he should be fine.
He's got hamstring spasms, I believe.
Yeah. What is that? That doesn't. I don't want that. That
doesn't sound enjoyable.
It
doesn't sound enjoyable. He's gonna play, yeah.
But it's like if we're doing a draft on players that like don't finish the game today, Juju feels like he's a first rounder possibly.
I do think that he's been dealing with it for a lot of his career, though. I don't think this is something new. That's the only counter to that.
And he sucked for a lot of his career. That's the other counter to that. So
all right, that's fair. That's fair.
He's had one good game in the last like 3 years.
Maybe it's the TikTok dances pregame if he cuts them out.
But it works. That burns out his hamstrings. He doesn't say
all that shaking. Yeah.
Is he still? I'm not a TikTok bro. Is he still doing that?
I think he still does all the TikTok stuff, right? I see him.
For him. Yeah, I didn't know, but okay. But like again, the main theme, one of the big themes on this show, is we're searching for value, and I guess there's Noah Brown at 4K, and you can call that what you want. The 3K Coker on Carolina. Tucker for Vegas.
You really like this Coker guy, huh?
No, that's not what I'm saying is that I'm probably going to play some begrudgingly because we live in the world of a salary cap, but I'm not happy about it. But like, I'm trying to find ways to play players I actually want to play is basically, and he's one way to get there. I'm not in any way endorsing it, but I might just because I have 3K left and I got to get another receiver. That's just how that goes. Anything else we should say as far as running backs? I want to talk about some receivers. We got to get some tight ends. About 20 minutes or so, you guys get Squirrel Patrol, one of the absolute best in the business. In addition to Squirrel, also 2 others best in the business. Neil and Erik, TheLuuch, Will, Kristi coming in for crunch time, I believe around 12:10. Ricky Pearsall, by the way, should be available today for San Fran. Shout out to him, like 50 days after he got shot. I don't know how much he's going to play, but just the fact that he's back and available, feeling better, probably their 4th receiver or so, 3rd or 4th receiver. He's another cheapie, but not sure how much work he gets. Anything else we want to drive home here, Tim, as far as running backs, or shall we pivot to receivers?
Let's go to receiver.
All right, Tim, you have the honor of opening up the receivers. I'm giving a refresh on our lineup HQ. I want to see if we have some ownership stuff coming in or get a new batch. Not just yet. We'll get one at some point. But as of right now, receivers, most popular one on the board is Drake London. Right there is Juju because of salary. Trey Tucker, again, got blanked last game. Theoretically, this is a really good spot, and they're running out of people to throw the football to. Neighbors coming back from his concussion, also getting 18%. Jefferson at 18%. Ayuk at 16. Metcalf, really good game environment there with Atlanta. McLaurin, it's just a matter of how much. I guess the blowout is somewhat concerning, I guess to some degree. But Washington just kind of like choose your own adventure. However you want to score those 30 points today. Certainly, McLaurin can get in the box a couple times. Tim, talk to me about receivers.
Yeah, from a cash game perspective, it's pretty easy. I think you're starting off with Justin Jefferson and Drake London. Drake London seems to be really the consensus pick across the industry in terms of an amazing points per dollar play, an amazing GPP play, an amazing cash game play. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he came in higher owned than 19%.
Same.
So because he seems to be getting a lot of steam from everywhere. He's going to be in my cash game lineup. Not sure how much I'm going to be building into this game for my 3-max stuff. Not that it's not an amazing game environment. I'm not saying that people have to do that by any means. Like this is a phenomenal game from DFS perspective. There's just so many really, really strong plays kind of like in that price range and game, like DK Metcalf at $6,800, $100 less than Drake London. He's going to be, only going to be around 13%. And I wouldn't be surprised if that came down and Drake London's went up. So I've already talked about how I like Geno. So I kind of prefer Metcalf over London, but that's pretty tough. Then I was interested to see how high owned we had projected Brandon Ayuk at 6,300, but man, that's a really, really nice price tag on him.
16%.
Yeah, and he's 6,300, and I did not think that he would be that highly owned. I figured guys in that range like Deontay Johnson, Tank Dell, would be higher owned, or even like Terry McLaurin would be higher owned than Ayuk. But I mean, I think 6,300 is a pretty good price tag in a game that I don't think is going to get played all that much. So I think he's a really strong tournament play. And then I think I'm going to be playing Juju in cash, but I don't love it. If people want to go Trey Tucker, that's fine. But really, in terms of these super, super cheap wide receivers, I don't really want to play Jerry Jeudy at 4,800. I'm not playing him in cash games. I'm not going to play Ray McLeod or Noah Brown, despite the fact that I think that they're very, very strong GPP plays. And I think that I just, like, if I have to, I could play Jordan Whittington, but I would prefer getting to Juju.
Elijah Moore, is he also in that pool of nonsense for you? 3-2 on Cleveland?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really want to play any. I mean, I guess since he's so cheap, he's okay, but not for cash games. Like maybe I guess for 3 max if he gets you everything that you want somewhere else. But I do not like, attaching to that Browns passing attack.
See, Devin is showing off the sim stuff, optimal versus projected ownership, and the way it is right now. And I think what's going to happen is this is going to change. Whittington's going to get more projected ownership when we get a new batch. I think I could be wrong, but he's currently projecting as the best with Debo right behind him, home run hitter, Tutu Atwell, another guy on the Rams, Wan'Dale Robinson, which is kind of shocking to me because his ADOT is like 2. I'm rounding down, but it's not a lot. He's not a guy that's going to break big time plays, but he does compile a bunch of catches. Oh, at the bottom is Trey Tucker. That's interesting. I kind of sort of get it. Ayuk also somewhat surprising at the bottom, as his neighbors, and Juju again, another guy not surprising as far as the negative way we have it right now. Of course, 2 hours plus till kickoff, so this stuff does change. Bobby, a lot of names thrown out there as far as receivers. Any you want to gravitate to? Any you want to double down on, or to say Tim is wrong about? I'm curious what you're doing with this collection of nonsense as far as receivers. These names we've thrown out there. Do you have different players? Are you going to be hitting more the mid-tier where you don't necessarily have to mess with the likes of Juju and Tucker as much? How are you handling receivers?
Yeah, Drake London is, I think, by far the best receiver play on the slate. My difference with Tim is there are 2 guys that kind of go second and third for me, one being Tank Dell. I just think he's underpriced, especially with Nico Collins out. And the other is Jordan Addison. I just think Jordan Addison is a very good play. Like if you're moving to the mid-tier, he's a little bit of leverage off Jefferson. Like I said, I think I'm going to be around the field on Jefferson. Not sure if I'm going to be above or below. Currently below. But Addison, I think, is a great pivot because he's at 5'6". So you're getting value there. It's direct leverage off a very chalky play that a lot of people in higher stakes stuff are going to pay up to. So I like Addison a good bit. He's hitting a lot of my teams. Terry McLaurin, he's another one, 6,800. Really like to spend for McLaurin. Not like you're spending too much. I think he's a really good play. I prefer Noah Brown to Tucker. Also prefer Whittington to Tucker, which could be a bad decision point, but I guess for value receivers. Well, what's Trey Tucker's price? 4,200. Noah Brown, 4K. What's Whittington's price?
48.
48. I like that our sims are basically saying don't get to as much Tucker. Ray McLeod, I think, is an interesting value as well in that kind of mid-range. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he's a tournament option also in that Minnesota-Detroit game. Like I said, I like the Goff side, so I could play St. Brown. I could play Jamison Williams. I think those guys are interesting. And then you can run back Addison or Jefferson. I think there's a lot of options to do that in that game, just like that game in general for run backs and differentiating yourself. It's easy to differentiate yourself, right? Who else? Josh Downs. Like, people aren't going to play Josh Downs, and they probably should be playing Josh Downs. He's attached to Anthony Richardson. Yeah, that isn't the greatest, but guy has just extreme potential. And he's someone I like. I like that our Sims are showing off A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown gets lost in the wash when everyone's going to kind of go to Saquon in that narrative. A.J. Brown gets a really good matchup. It's man coverage. He crushes man coverage. So he's someone that I think you should give a second look to, especially if everyone's just going to jump right to Saquon as like the guy to run Daniel Jones back. Don't forget about A.J. Brown.
So Philadelphia altogether, like ownership-wise, the most popular player for Philadelphia is Calcaterra because Dallas Goedert is out, and he's kind of the cheapie du jour, but he's not even 2.5. Of course, he can't be 2.5. He's 3.2 on DK. But his ownership is around 9% or so. A.J. Brown at 6%, Barkley at 4%, Hurts at 4%, Devontae Smith 4%. This entire Philadelphia team is just, and I know they've disappointed this year, right? But you very, very obvious, like, who's going to get stuff done if Philly puts up 5 touchdowns. It's like you feel pretty good that, Brown, Barkley, Smith, that nucleus, and Hurts had themselves a big day. So, I think
did Bobby mention Jaden Reed? Sorry, Dean.
I don't think so. Did you mention Reed?
I would throw Reed in there too. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson in love stacks. I think if you run everything, the Packers are the one stack like last week that no one's going to play on the slate because no one can figure out who to match them with. So like Reed, obviously, good match with Love. I think Tucker Kraft's a very good match with Love, and then a run back of one of these Houston guys. I could see the Packers like ultimately on the winner today.
We're still waiting on Wicks as well, right? We're not sure if he's going to be a go. He's the only one that, which matters to some degree, I think, because that Green Bay receiving core, it's we'll just muck things up a little bit, right? Do we have anything, Tim, as far as Wicks? I mean, he's still questionable, as far as I know.
Yeah, he's still questionable.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Reed's coming in with 3% ownership, projected ownership. So, I mean, that seems pretty juicy. And did you say it's the highest plays on the blitz game level factors, right, Dean?
Let's see. I have it pulled up. Let's see. I don't think I closed that out. As far as game plays, number 1 is Houston at 68.9, Green Bay 67.1, and the green about the 5th most. But yeah, they're expected to have a fair bit of plays. Seattle, Atlanta, Green Bay, Washington, Detroit. Those are the ones that are in the green. Indianapolis right there on the fringe, the next team up. So, yeah, I like Love plenty. He doesn't scoot, and I don't really know who to pair him with. I know that Reed is like the obvious one. It's also like not cheap. And I saw somebody in the chat ask about the other side of that game, Bobby, as far as Dell and Diggs, the absence of Collins should open up some stuff, maybe get some Schultz as well. I think he had, 7 or 8 targets or so last week. Do you have a lean amongst Dell or Diggs?
I think Dell's my second favorite receiver on the slate.
I really like Dell. I really like Dell today.
I would definitely play Dell before I play Diggs. So I like that call as well. Anything else we should note here as far as receivers? Shall we jump to tight ends? We got about 10 minutes or so until we have jumping in the next show to reprieve us. Squirrel Patrol. We have Neil as well and Erik coming in about 10 minutes or so. Any final takes as far as receivers? Otherwise, Tim, talk about tight ends. And I kind of like some of the guys. I don't know if I can pay for them. I know right now optimals are probably going to tell you to settle on Parkinson just because of salary stuff. But Kelsey, last man standing in KC, essentially. Bowers, last man standing for the Raiders, just look fantastic so far. The one bright spot there. And Njoku, again, the theme is last man standing, but just terrible offense, terrible quarterback. But Njoku, in theory, looks really good. And then the punts are like Calcaterra and Sanders maybe on Carolina. How are you handling tight end? Because I feel like there's a little bit more opportunity cost today than it typically is. Although a lot of times when the game plays out, it's like, oh wow, they all stunk.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we say that at the end of today is that they were in fact all terrible. Yeah, it appears as if Kobe Parkinson is the kind of the quote unquote optimal play. I really don't mind saving 600 and going to Grant Calcaterra. He is not a blocking tight end. He is a a catching tight end. So I'm not too worried about him like just being stuck in there to block. He's a big man. He's 6'4". I think he's like 250 pounds. He's 3,200. Pretty good matchup. So I almost don't mind just going down to him over Parkinson. So, and then like the blitz absolutely loves Brock Bowers, and I don't blame it at all. 5,800. I think he's going to be really their number one wide receiver today. So I really like Bowers quite a bit. I don't think I can play him in cash games though, but I certainly am going to get to him in one of my 3 max builds. And then of course there's Kyle Pitts too. I never play Kyle Pitts, and that's been very good for me over the last couple seasons. But this is a really great game environment for him and a really good matchup. So he's fine. And then David Njoku, definitely. It's a really great price again with no Amari. So he may end up being the number one wide receiver, really number one target earner. But I just hate that offense. So I'm probably gonna pass on him and just stick with Bowers and Calcaterra.
By the way, shout out to the Jags, who have run off 3 straight touchdowns, the last of which a 96-yard punt return. You're supposed to let that ball just go in the end zone, right? 96 yards, but no, a 96-yard punt return for the Jags. Tank got in the end zone, and Lawrence to Thomas. Looks like it's currently 22-10, but a minute left in the first half there in London. Also, since we're giving shout-outs, we want to shout out Old School 45. The read says for taking down the Week 6 Listener League, and he didn't officially take it down. Got to shout out Stevie. Stevie took it down. We finished second by like 0.1 points, but I know we were talking about possibly carrying over an extra month for the going forward, but not paying it out. But Old School 45 got a month free of RotoGrinders Premium for finishing second and taking it down. If you want to participate, the link is in the description. Get yourself a month free of RotoGrinders Premium. If you happen to win that contest, spots are limited. I believe to 200 or so. Myself and I assume both you guys, all your favorites at RG are involved and hang out and throw a lineup in there every single week. So yeah, get yourself a month free.
I haven't got an email for it in 3 weeks.
Well, you got to be on the recurring list. I don't get emails either. It's a recurring link that comes on DraftKings.
I'm just saying, I'd like to play.
Well, did you not? Why are you not? You didn't sign up for recurring? That's on you, my friend. There's no emails.
I don't know. I thought they were just going to send it out every week.
All right. Well, thankfully for Old School 45, you probably would have took it down last week. So there you go.
No, I would not have.
I'll send you the link if you want it. I'll send you the link, and we'll take care of it for you. Bobby, what do you have as far as tight ends?
I think I'm just going to be playing like Parkinson and overweight on Parkinson because I think everyone's thinking the same thing. They're just going to pay up the tight end, and we're pretty much starved for value. I don't mind Parkinson. I don't mind Ertz in that Washington-Carolina game. I know these guys are plotters, but like it's the nature of the slate. You pretty much are in a situation where you don't have a ton of salary, and I just like the upside of receiver and running back more than I do at tight end. Njoku, throw him in the mix. Grant Calcaterra, like Tim said, he's a pass-catching tight end. Kyle Pitts actually has some ceiling, right? If I'm going to play some Kirk Cousins, which I expect to be, I will be playing Kyle Pitts. Never play him, so this is a fantastic opportunity to play him. Yeah, and I guess if I had to rank like the higher-end guys, Bowers, Laporta, I don't love Kelsey. I just think like I know they want to get him involved in all this other stuff, but I don't know what his ceiling is. Like maybe he comes out and plays well in the beginning and then in the beginning of the game, but I don't know if it's going to last throughout. Like they want to save him, right? It makes sense to save him. I don't know. You can throw Laporte in. It's another one to spend up. The general guys to spend up on. Kittle, I do worry about because I think they're going to be able to. Like, I think Kittle's a really good play with Jennings out, but they're going to have to block a lot, right, with the pass rush, and that's usually where Kittle is kind of used, is pretty much in the blocking when they're facing a really good pass rush. So I don't even think I want to play much Kittle anymore. Yeah, it's mainly pay down everywhere. Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft's a great tight end play. How about Johnny Munt? Are you interested in Johnny Munt, Dean, for Minnesota? Any Johnny Munt?
It's his last chance before Hawkinson. Not really. I mean, Hawkinson's going to take over soon. It seemed like he was close to playing this week. He's cheap, and like that's if you want to make the argument of like he's cheap and the position stinks, so just get out of it cheap. I do think that like one or two of these guys is going to have a big day. I do like the Bowers call. It's just a salary thing. Kittle, like you said, I like to run out Kittle when one of Samuel or Ayuk is not playing, and they're both playing. So what is his ceiling? Sometimes he gets just like 3 or 4 targets in those games. High variance, though, for Kittle for sure. Like the Detroit thing, oh, man, it's so wild. Laporte had 1 target last week, and it was like a goofy gadget play. Now, he got like a 50-yard touchdown out of it. That was his only target. It's just not happening, it seems like, and they don't need him. I think J-Mo coming back has certainly put a lid on him to some degree. I should say coming back, but J-Mo, taking a step forward, I suppose. You mentioned Amon-Ra. Like, I love Amon-Ra, but there's not one game this year where you're like, man, I wish I played Amon-Ra. Not one. Now, it might be this week.
Point. That's a really
good never like we haven't seen it. We have not seen that kind of game out of Amon-Ra. And again, they haven't really had to use it. They're probably catching up today. I shouldn't say probably, but they're 1-point dogs today. Yeah, the Calcaterra thing is just feels ridiculous and gross. Sanders is another one if you're running the Carolina doubles, I guess. It's a whole lot of I think I'm going to save salary here, but you like Chalky Parkinson, Bobby. I did not expect you to say that. I was surprised to hear you say, because he's going to be the most popular tight end, I think, with the absence of Kupp. You're okay with that?
I'm fine with it. Yeah. Sometimes you have to eat the chalk.
All right. I see Devin has let's see. No. Okay, I'm looking at my Sims now. I want to see if there's anything interesting in the Sims. Calcaterra is like the best play according to the Sims, which is really surprising to me. Then Theo Johnson, just a punt there for the Giants. And Njoku I like. Then Laporte. Munt is in the green as well. And Colby Parkinson is dead last on the board. I'm not trying to discourage it. We saw chalk tight end. Was it 2 weeks ago where chalk tight end absolutely smashed? That was Kraft, right?
Yeah.
Got in the box a couple times. But, it's always kind of tricky. Kincaid's another player. It's just not going to get played. Kind of lost and been disappointing. And now they added Cooper. That game should play slow. They should be playing ahead. So I understand why he's not projecting particularly great. Let's see. Anything else in the chat that's kind of... Do we have any defensive takes? I know we're still waiting for our next crew to be coming in here. Devin, give me a heads up when they're here. Schultz also getting a shout out. I think Schultz is in the pool. Sure, why not? Lone Wolf is saying that's tight end 1 potentially this week. Bobby, I know you like your defensive segment on your podcast. Anything you want to reiterate from yesterday? Or any I don't really have like a standout defense today. I don't really love defense at all in general. Do you have anything you feel good about?
How about the G-Man?
Yeah, that's big as a salary. I'm kind of landing on some Giants, right? That's just because they're cheap, Yeah. I'm assuming that's the best selling point, unless you think they're just gonna shut down Philly.
They're cheap. That's pretty much the best selling point, correct? Like, that's 2,500.
Yeah, it's me, Breezy. Giants okay in cash? That's a question for Tim. Are the Giants okay in cash? I think they're okay in cash. Tim?
I think they're okay in cash.
Yeah. Ideally, Tim, if you had the money, who do we want? Do we want Buffalo? Buffalo's probably the best defensive unit today. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, if you have all the money, probably Buffalo, but I just really rarely want to advocate for people to spend that much on the defense. So, actually, I don't mind the Rams.
Yeah.
I don't mind them at 3K. I don't know. It's tough. I think Giants are probably your cash games. If you have the 500, I'd probably rather play the Rams in cash. I think the Commanders are kind of interesting just because, I mean, Hubbard and Johnson are going to get a ton of ownership. And if they fail and the Commanders D, has a big game, that could be a lot of leverage there. And Commanders aren't going to get any ownership. So if I'm going to pay up at defense, I want them to be extremely low owned. So I think the Commanders have a chance to separate from the field at defense at extremely low ownership.
All right, we got Neil and Squirrel coming in just a second, as well as Erik. We got to finish strong, though, boys. Best stack. Be as ambitious as you want to be. You want to say game stack, by all means, go for it. You want to just say a mini stack. You want to say this quarterback and these receivers. Whatever you got. Dealer's choice. Bobby, what do you got for me?
I'm going to go Kirk Cousins to Drake London.
All right, Tim, see it and raise it.
I'm going to say Tank Dell is going to break the slate and is going to be in all the optimal lineups today.
All right, so we're stacking him.
I like that.
I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to stack him.
All right. I don't think you answered the question, but you gave me a nice piece of information.
That's a good piece of information. I second that. I like that a lot.
You're answering a question, a different question, but still, that can definitely be useful. All right, let's go ahead and bring in Squirrel. Let's bring in Neil. Let's bring in Erik. Yeah. Are you guys, Erik, are you having the trouble of finding players? Is this, I'm sure it's not the first time. We're at the point in the season, week 7, week 8, week 9. If you're playing well, your salary goes up. But if you're playing poor, your salary barely goes down, and it's not a fair trade-off. And even the injured guys, like, oh, well, here's some injuries, but oh, wait, that guy's backup is 7K. Oh, well, then what's the point? Is this the week where it's the tightest it's ever been? Is that just me, or is that everybody?
I don't know if it's the tightest it's ever been, but I feel exactly like what you're talking about there, getting smarter about pricing the backups. And then there's only so many backfields that are valuable, like in and of themselves, right? Like Nick Chubb's back. Nobody cares, right, about the Browns because they're so terrible. Nobody cares. And then there's like guys coming back. There's murky backfields, and quarterback play is not exactly awesome across the league right now. So it feels very, very bizarre, which I don't know if this is good, Dean, but this is when I really I get excited about the slates because the total dumpster, disgusting guys who are going to be selling insurance in 2 years that I like to play. It feels better, right? I'm not giving up as much to play. I'll save it for the next hour, but I got one guy that's the flag plant that's just absolutely disgusting.
Is it Jalen Coker by chance? I'm just throwing a dart.
It is.
I don't want to spoil.
Coker.
It is Jalen Coker. Well, there you go. You guys can tune out now.
Everyone keeps bringing up this Coker guy. Like, I didn't even know he was. So we got on the show.
Good at football.
Good at football.
Holy Cross? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Undrafted? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Myself and Bobby and Tim, we do appreciate you watching the first portion. We're going to go ahead and yield. Squirrel, we have Neil, we have Erik. Erik, we're setting the bar high with some Jalen Coker talk. You guys got the next hour or so until crunch time comes in. It is all yours.
So I'm going to shut up for about the next hour and 15 minutes. I made my contribution to GPP Final Takes, coming in strong with Jalen Coker. But welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. I'm, of course, your host, Erik Beimfohr, joined by two of the best DFS players in all of the land, John Breslin, a.k.a. SquirrelPatrol, and Neil Orfield, a.k.a. Neil Orfield. We missed Neil last week, where we're excited to have him back. We reverted back to GPP Final Takes. We are now GPP Flannel Takes yet again. Neil, of course, upholding our flannel quota for the week. Big game for Neil's Minnesota Vikings this week, which we will assuredly talk about. But really quickly, if you've not joined us before for this show, GPP Final Takes is the title, and we're not necessarily going to go game by game or necessarily going to go position by position, because we want to cover kind of all the final things that you need to know, think about, dissect for your lineups for tournaments. So that could be injuries, that could be games, it could be players, it could be all of that stuff. But we'll get into just about everything we can for the next hour and 15 minutes, and then we'll hand it off to crunch time. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. I will try to hit as many of them as I can during this show. And of course, the crunch time folks will get you set up if we miss any of your questions. But super quickly, I'm feeling good, guys. I'm feeling excited. Parker Washington returned a punt to the house in this London game. Brian Thomas looks good. Drake May looks good, and I get to talk about Jalen Coker today. So it's a good Sunday. It's a wonderful Sunday. I don't really feel like talking about a lot of the good players because it's a weird slate. So let's kick it off with that. Let's go to Neil first, since we missed you last week, Neil. I asked John last week, and I kind of like leading in with this, is like when normally it feels like we're like, oh gosh, this chalk running back or this game is going to be right. Or the Packers, remember a couple weeks ago, the Packers guys, like that's the crux of the slate. I don't know what that is today. I don't have a thing where I go in and I'm like, I got to make a decision on this player or this team or whatever. What are you thinking about, like when you open up the slate to start to build lineups?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess I don't really approach it that way in general, like making a big decision on one player versus another. Yeah. This is so I'm with Dean. What he was saying about this being a tough slate from the perspective of like salaries. It's just like really tough to do what I want to do. There are no true value running backs, so it kind of feels like you're forced onto a build where you're paying up a little bit at running back and then paying down at wide receiver. And I haven't found a ton that I love to really get away from that. So it is a slate that I'm still sort of wrestling with what I want to do. The one piece that I immediately, when you open up the slate, immediately I see, oh my God, Washington is playing Carolina. Like that game is going to go off. Those defenses are so bad, really exciting offenses. And I think I'm just going to continue leading into it. Like it is pretty chalky, but it's not chalky to the extent that I am like afraid of it. Like I'm going to shy away from it. So I guess that would be it. I'm leaning into the chalk on Washington, Carolina. If that game fails, I'm probably having a bad day.
There was actually a good question on the expert survey about late that you guys would know, of course, all of us filling out the expert survey. I think you even might have proposed it, Neil. But so there's only 3 afternoon games today, only a 10 game slate. But John, one is that game. Call it that. It feels like I'm trying to think of a MLB equivalent, this is like Pacers Hawks or like Wizards Hawks in the NBA. You're like, the football is like, it's not going to be that great, but neither team plays any defense at all. And like Neil said, there's ownership on that one. We got Raiders, Rams in the other game, and then maybe the best game of the day, but not a super appealing fantasy game in KC and in the 49ers. I do kind of like the afternoon a lot better, but it's just I feel uncomfortable putting together lineups even when I'm basing it around those afternoon games. How are you kind of feeling about those 3 afternoon games as it relates to the whole slate?
So that's actually that's not my game, which is interesting because, I'm in the DC area. So I love the idea that we have like this year round thing of like Washington Commanders defense and the Washington Wizards defense and then Patrick Corbin. And we've been doing this for years, and it's just like, they're always the relevant thing, always the relevant thing on the DFS slate is on the local TV. But I prefer, because like that game could be a little bit lopsided. And like the big fantasy score from that game might just be Jaden Daniels. That's it. Yeah. And Chuba Hubbard is probably a player that I want to get to as well. Everything else in that game starts to get a little bit thin. So I like the Detroit Minnesota game a little bit more, actually, like kind of substantially more. They are, I think, first and third in receptions allowed per game. Like both teams are going to want to pass. Like that could stop the clock a lot, or lead to a lot of receptions. Either way, it works for me. So that's maybe the game that I'm a little bit more excited about, which is odd. Not picking on the Commanders. Yeah.
Let's start with the Lions-Vikings one, because I think it's much more fun real life game. Certainly the Panthers I don't think are ever going to be, at the top of anybody's list to watch, and Washington will be, but Vikings surprise of the season to most to start this year. Lions, one of the Super Bowl favorites, and lost Aiden Hutchinson, which is relevant to the Super Bowl favorite odds, but also relevant to DFS. He was basically unblockable as a defensive end, and the Lions have been this pass funnel but also like a little tricky. I'll victory lap one thing. Last week, my big stance was the Cowboys are going to be real chalky, and I think the Lions are just going to absolutely destroy them, and the Lions absolutely destroyed them. But part of that is Aiden Hutchinson's pass rush is so good. Now they have depth, but I think that this game sets up a little bit better in terms of just DFS goodness. It doesn't have to shoot out the 42-35 with what you said, John, but what's your kind of way to approach kind of Darnold, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, or like how are you mostly attacking this one?
I think it's clear you got to spend up at the wide receivers. I think Justin Jefferson's the best play on the slate, and I want to pair him with Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot. And so I'm super glad that you tagged Jalen Coker because so
how do you get
a lot of heavy lifting in some of those lineups that combine Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson, including our lineup for the show. So I'm glad I have cover to blame it on somebody else.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think this is a week for me where there's like a bigger than normal differentiation between cash games and tournaments. So I think for cash games, you're hitting a lot of these mid-range players, and like you're playing a lot of like maybe like Jordan Whittington and like Drake London, and you're kind of playing it safe with like the 6,000-ish running backs. I think for tournaments, I really want to spend up, and I'm going to have some lineups that look ridiculous, but that's okay, because I'm going to be like basically like locking in or not locking in, but like spending up for a lot of players, and then just kind of rotating through these like value guys, like the Jalen Cokers, like the Trey Tuckers. I'm going to call him Trey Tucker for the first time in 3 weeks instead of Trey Turner. And I'm just kind of like I'm playing some of these like really thin wide receivers, and it's okay, and some of them are gonna totally blank. That's all right. But like hopefully one of those guys hits on the right lineup. And if Justin Jefferson's doing really well, Amon-Ra St. Brown's doing really well, like I'm gonna have some like Malik Neighbors, Saquon Barkley lineups. And like hopefully one of those lineups hits. But for me, it's like very much like a multi-entry week, I think, more so than a cash game.
I love that, Neil. And it's also perfect for this particular game because spoiler alert, not a lot of cheap pieces into the best offenses in the NFL with the Vikings and the Lions. But I kind of love it was one of those where I was feeling what John was feeling. I'm like, am I just going to keep doing like you can build the 6K lineup, right? Like a bunch, like maybe one cheap guy, Grant Calcaterra or Colby Parkinson, or spend down at defense and then build this like 6K lineup. And I just was feeling like what Squirrel was feeling. So are you interested in similar, Neil, like a little bit more different builds specifically for tournaments this week? And is this game one of the reasons why you're doing that with the JJs and Amon-Ra's? And I mean, Addison looks good. JMO looks good. Everybody looks good in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I love that idea in general, just flipping the entire script. If everybody's building with the mid-price, just completely change your entire lineup. And you're still using, you can make lineups that project pretty similarly to the optimal that do use all of those mid-price players using some of these spend-up options. So, I mean, the game that I'm attacking the most, the Washington-Carolina game, does have a lot of those mid-priced options. So yeah. I'm kind of building it both ways. But I agree that I love the Minnesota-Detroit game. I think the Darnold-Jefferson stack looks awesome. I'll bring down the price of that stack by adding in Addison, maybe using JMO as a bring back, that kind of thing. Like there are ways to not have it be so prohibitively expensive. If you just don't do Jefferson and Amon-Ra, you can kind of save some salary there. So yeah, I like that game environment quite a bit. I do like the Coker call out. He is being talked about a lot. I'm curious where the ownership.
It's making me so mad.
I know everybody's talking about him. It was literally I do a cage match show where I draft against other people on Wednesday nights, and Jacob Sanderson drafted Jalen Coker on Wednesday night when I was like, he projects for like 5 fantasy points. I don't even know what it was, but I think that has maybe even gone up. Everybody's been talking about him. So yeah, unfortunately, you're not going to be completely alone on your contrarian take because some other sharps are on it as well. But yeah, he looks pretty good. Definitely a way to bring down the salary. Trey Tucker obviously looks awesome, and I actually didn't look at his ADOT this week. I know earlier in the year he had gone from being kind of a really long ADOT guy last year to that coming in a little bit this year. So he becomes a little bit more like cash playable almost. And now with Jacoby Myers out along with Devonta Adams, you have to imagine he's going to be targeted some. So yeah, I think that there are some ways to throw in a few value pieces along with, spending up, flipping the script a little bit. So yeah, I think that will be something that I do. Some of I'll of course be mixed because I do love that Washington Carolina passing attack more than John does.
John, in your Vikings Lions stacks, you mentioned like spending up, but what about the ancillary pieces? I don't feel like we need to belabor Justin Jefferson. Maybe people in the chat want us to belabor it, but best wide receiver on the planet, pretty good matchup. The reason, I guess I will belabor him a little bit. The reason why Justin Jefferson hasn't gone ham this year is because the Vikings are up by 3 touchdowns in the second half of every game. The volume's been there. Sam Darnold's level of play has been there, so I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson's lack of ceiling so far. But we mentioned the Jalen Cokers and stuff of the world, but there are some of those mid-tier pieces. Addison, JMO does. We mentioned I love the phrase. I've stolen it, John. The red zone player. We got the PPR scams and the red zone players, and JMO is a red zone player. You turn on red zone, and there goes JMO running down the sideline for a 60-yard touchdown. So he looks appealing. But Laporta is a little pricey for what he's done. Just is any of the non Jefferson, Amon-Ra guys of particular interest to you?
Yeah. So I think Jameson Williams definitely. I think it's more of a Jahmyr Gibbs game than a David Montgomery game, but I'll almost certainly have some of both in my Detroit Minnesota stacks that I'm doing in my multi-entry build. I'm not as high on Aaron Jones. I think is I don't want to play running backs against Detroit. I like the game because it's a game I think both teams are going to be passing a lot. So that kind of leads me more to Gibbs over Jones and David Montgomery. It's pretty much I would say it's Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, some Jahmyr Gibbs. I'll get to some of the tight ends. I'll have some Johnny Munt because I'll need to. If I'm not playing Jalen Coker, then I'll need to play some Johnny Munt. But yeah, it's pretty much the high end wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson.
Anything else on this one, Neil? I guess do you guys have a Darnold golf preference? Which one are you leaning more towards? I know a couple extra bucks on Darnold, but do you guys have a lean?
I do Darnold.
Yeah, I'm just leaning into Darnold.
Famous last words. Jalen Coker, Johnny Munt, and Sam Darnold week. What could possibly go wrong? But let's pivot to let's hit a couple of if there's any questions or just general comments in the chat, and then we'll pivot over to that Washington Carolina game, because like Neil, to me, that I saw that on the slate and I stood up from my desk, and I was like, all right, this is my Super Bowl. But Samuel asks, what about Achane or the Dolphins running backs? I know Tyler Huntley is still playing. Positive news on Tua Tagovailoa, hopefully back pretty soon here. But off of bye week, we could tell the story about the Dolphins. I'm not sure that it has a happy ending, but we could say, right, bye week, Huntley has been competent before on the turf in Indy against a bad defense. What about Achane or Mostert or Tyreek or any of these guys, Neil? Anything on the Dolphins for you?
Yeah, to me, probably not going to Waddle, but I definitely, you can kind of make a case for any of them just because they're all really fast. Could just break it off one play, pay off their salary pretty easily. I think I'm just going to have a little bit, just minimal exposure to maybe Achane and Tyreek Hill. I don't think I'm going to Jalen Waddle. Maybe Raheem Mostert, I think you can make a case for also. It's such a tough spot because it's it's an easy spot as far as the defense goes against the Colts. It's a great spot to play some of these speedy guys. Just hope that they break one off. They've just been so bad with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. It's really hard to be enthusiastic about any of them, but we know the talent is there. And like you say, coming off a bye week, we've seen Huntley be good, it's a couple of years removed from it at this point since he's been a decent NFL quarterback, but I'm still a little bit hopeful that they can figure it out. Mike McDaniel, I'm losing faith a little bit that he is just a wizard out there. I kind of thought when Huntley came in, maybe he can just make something happen with a new type of offense. He can scheme things up to make it work for all of his speedy receivers and running backs, and it just hasn't been the case so far. But yeah, I think with the bye week, you can definitely make a case for any of these super speedy guys. To me, it's going to be minimal. I'm probably not going to have a ton of anybody, but I might have sprinkle in a little bit of Achane and Tyreek Hill.
I think I might like Tyreek a little bit more than Neil does, but John, probably the most important part is specifically on DraftKings, Tyreek Hill's 7,300 now. Jalen Waddle is 5,300. So it isn't like the pay up to be contrarian, pray to God Tyler Huntley is awesome. you of course at 7,300 you want a huge game, but we don't need like the 40 spot Tyreek, 2 long touchdowns. And I think he can still do it against the Colts. But what do you think about the reduced priced Dolphins?
They're still not cheap enough. I have Tyreek Hill projected around the same level as Jordan Whittington, and Whittington's 4,800. Tyreek Hill is 7,300.
You're crazy.
Well, yeah. Tyreek Hill, he can, I said on the Friday show with Jam to Win, he can take a screen pass, 80 yards. But at 7,300, that still might not be enough. They may not pass enough. He may not get enough receptions. And if he goes out and does 180 and 3 touchdowns, then I'm obviously wrong. But which is within his range of possibilities. I don't know. I think he's going to see Tyreek Hill is going to still see some ownership. I'm going to be playing some Anthony Richardson. I think Tyreek Hill lineups, some Anthony Richardson, Devin Achane lineups in my 150 set. It's probably not something I'm going to for smaller field contests. It is a potential Millie Maker winner. These super large field contests, but I'm really just not getting there in smaller field stuff.
I think I'm attracted to the Anthony Richardson part of it as well, where we got this quarterback who we know, we think can provide these huge spikes at a reasonable price and not crazy ownership, and then Tyreek on the other side. And I think I like it a tick more than you guys, but I wouldn't put it that if I got the money for Justin Jefferson, I'm just gonna go get Justin Jefferson. But let's talk about the Coors Field, the Rockies and Nationals game or whatever we got going on out there in Carolina and Washington. Deontay Johnson just quickly is expected to play. Weird injury stuff going on with him this week, but he is expected to play. And Brian Robinson is trending in the right direction, whatever that means. And I actually want to start there, Neil, because as much as I love Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin and really anybody against Carolina, the easiest way to attack them has been with the running backs, because they lose, the other team's winning and everybody runs all over Carolina. But with B-Rob back and obviously kind of a 3-headed monster there, it feels a little tricky. So if this is our Super Bowl, if you will, on this slate, the team that's going to score the most points, Washington, how are you approaching them, in your lineups?
Yeah, so I'm going to have a lot of everything. So it's going to be a mix of, I'm probably mostly going to be either or, to be clear. So it's going to be either I'm doing Jaden Daniels with Terry McLaurin. I like Noah Brown as kind of a value play. Also, speaking of kind of low owned value guys, he's been kind of increasing his role since he joined Washington. It's leveled out at just under 60% route participation the past couple of weeks, but I still think we could just see it continue to ascend just because it plateaued for 1 week over the next. I'm not really concerned about that. The trend overall has been positive. Also saw 8 targets last week. So I do think Noah Brown is pretty interesting to throw into a Jaden Daniels stack, kind of bring down the total ownership of the stack. So I think that's one way you can lean into the chalky game environment, but just get a little bit different, bring down the overall ownership. But yeah, I'm going to have stacks with Jaden Daniels, with Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, I think all look pretty good. But I'm also going to have plenty of lineups that have Brian Robinson instead. I think he looks really good against the Panthers. I don't think I'm going as far as McWeapon. I've seen people bring him up on multiple shows. I don't think I'm going to get there with Brian Robinson active. I would have had some interest if Brian Robinson were out, but I do think that I might get to some Eckler. I think Eckler is sort of a contrarian. He's about the cheapest, maybe the cheapest running back that I'm going to play at 5,900. Sort of similar to last week, and I guess I wasn't on the show, so I didn't get to say it, but I was kind of into Tyler Algier last week, and that worked out pretty well. I do that kind of thing kind of a lot, the Galaxy Brain backup running back, where when there are extra outs to relevancy. Usually I like to do it when the running back is 4,300 as opposed to 5,900. It's a little bit more than I typically do the backup running back thing, but he's more like a 1B type thing than a true backup running back. He'll have a role regardless. He'll have some standalone value, but also I think with Brian Robinson coming in banged up, it's maybe a little bit more likely that Austin Eckler has a larger share of the workload than we're used to, or just, we could have a re-aggravation for Brian Robinson. There are extra ways for Austin Eckler to get in there, but more importantly, it's just when he is in there, he's facing the Carolina Panthers, so it just makes it, he's going to be much more efficient in general, more likely that I'll have some splash plays. So yeah, I'm playing all sides of Washington, obviously not going to have a ton of Eckler. That's obviously just a galaxy brain play, not going to be a huge part of my lineups. But because I don't really like any cheaper running backs, and you can clearly see a path to Austin Eckler having a big game, I think it's pretty interesting against Carolina. I don't know if I'd go as far as playing Robinson and Eckler together, because we know a big part of the Eckler play is hoping that Brian Robinson is not, a full go. We can almost make a case for it because they're playing Carolina. But the other side of it, I like as well. I'll have some Andy Dalton. I'm leaning more into Jaden Daniels. I think Andy Dalton is interesting, though, at the very least against Carolina. Obviously going to have a good amount of Deontay Johnson. I think Xavier Legette looks pretty good. If you take away, like, over the past 3 weeks, he had one game, week 5, where he got hurt early on and was out. If you take out that game, he has, I want to say, like 12 targets on 80% route participation in weeks 4 and 6. So, like, pretty involved in the games that he's actually been playing full time. So I like Legette. Coker, I think, is totally reasonable value play. So I'm going to be playing, and then of course Chuba Hubbard in absolute smash. You can, just use Chuba Hubbard as the run back in your Washington stacks. He looks awesome. So yeah, I'm playing all sides of this game.
It is, John. It is a little tricky, as Neil mentioned, about 12 different players, right, in this game, and I think that they're all totally viable. I just want to add, Eckler is particularly interesting to me, whether or not you play him, but like planning around, like, I don't know, like, he's reasonable if I get stuck is not the right word, but like if I get stuck and I got 5,900, okay, we play Austin Eckler. Like, Brian Robinson is trending in the right direction. That is far from a guarantee of like, he's back, he's all good, he's going to be active. That's not even a guarantee. So I just want to add that. But John, your home team, I need some guidance on the Washington side. I think most people, I obviously mentioned Jalen Coker already. I think everybody kind of understands the Carolina side. But what about the Washington side? How are you approaching them?
I mean, I just like Jaden Daniels. Like, he actually hasn't necessarily been bringing along other Washington players with him. Like, a lot of Washington players have been doing fine. Like, there aren't a lot of like Washington guys that you needed to have other than Jaden Daniels, or really wanted to have. Having said that, some of them are well priced. Like, Noah Brown is 4K. I think he's fine. And he's a guy that's had a bunch of big games in the past. And we've talked about, I think, even last week and previous weeks, that like, they signed him right before the season. Then he, so they were kind of ramping him up. Then he got hurt, missed a week. But I do think he's, maybe establishing himself as like the real number 2 wide receiver there. So, and he's only 4K on DraftKings. So I think that's a good value play. Zach Ertz, I think, is actually like second on the team in receiving. I think behind Austin Eckler. That was as of last week. So, you can go to Ertz, and the opportunity cost of tight end is not that high. So I'm playing a lot of like Jaden Daniels and Zach Ertz. I don't think he's found the end zone yet this season. So a
lot of 4-yard catches, baby. A lot of 4-yard catches.
Yeah, I mean, and like sometimes those do add up, and it might, tight end may be a position where nobody goes crazy, and I think Ertz is like 3,900, so it's fine. Like if I'm playing like Jaden Daniels, maybe I'd prefer to play Ertz over like Colby Parkinson or whoever. But I do think he's a little bit more expensive. But regardless, there's nothing that I'm like super excited about from the Washington side. If Brian Robinson misses the game, then that changes. But I just kind of had, because I think he's expected to play. Like, if there's a surprise, I'll potentially be swapping some lineups to get some Eckler in there. But I'm basically expecting Brian Robinson's going to play, and then that like kind of takes me off of the Washington backfield.
Yeah, it's one of those. I struggle with these a lot, where we all look at the same projections and all that kind of stuff, and you see, you look and you're like, Washington against Carolina, like, they're gonna hang 40 something in this game, and then you're like, yeah, but I don't like any of them. You know what I mean? That's a little bit of hyperbole, but like, do I just default to Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, or use Ertz as the cheap tight end and go that route? It's one of those where I don't want to force it, but also I'm like, I know this team is going to score, but like, I know it. And that's one of those things that irks me a little bit. So I haven't quite figured that one out, but let's hit a couple more questions and move on. Everybody seems to be very excited about, excited. I don't know if that's the right word. Philly and the Giants is getting a lot of back and forth in the chat. So we'll cover that one next. And maybe a couple of these questions will segue us into there. I don't know if it was a question, but they were talking about Kyron versus Saquon Barkley, both very similarly priced Kyren getting more ownership. I think rightfully so against, dude, if you let Najee Harris run for like 130 yards on you, I think Kyren's going to have just a fine day against Vegas. But Neil, do you have any preference in tournaments with Kyren being much higher owned? Are you just playing Kyren, or do you like Barkley with a little lower ownership?
Yeah, it's tough because of the ownership. It makes it really interesting. I do like Barkley. Like you immediately see, I don't love playing the revenge game narratives often, but I think Saquon Barkley, it's like maybe they do give him a little bit of extra run here. Wouldn't be the most shocking thing. It's a fine defense for the Eagles, but not like a matchup that you're really afraid of for Saquon Barkley in particular. Eagles have a good offensive line, so I don't have a strong preference, to be honest. My guess is that I end up similar ownership to both of them, which I guess means that I prefer Barkley because he is coming in lower owned. If I'm playing about the same, I'm going to be overweight to the field on Barkley, probably about even with the field on Kyren Williams. I'm shooting for about 20% of each would be kind of ideal for me because I do like both of them quite a bit. But for Barkley, that is well over his projected ownership. But it's kind of a gut thing of just like, yeah, they might. Like, I feel like the range of outcomes is wider for Barkley because they are playing in New York. Maybe, maybe he sees more opportunities in this revenge game narrative. So this is one where I'm kind of leaning into it, maybe foolishly because, they want to win. If going to Barkley is going to hinder them, they're not going to go back to Barkley over and over. But I think that there's more out there. If they take a lead, they probably lean on Barkley a little bit more. So I guess I prefer Barkley, but I think both are just awesome today.
John, I'm leading the witness, but Eric in the chat, I just want to remind you, Kenny Gainwell always scores a touchdown against the New York Giants. Remember that when you answer your part of this question, but Saquon or Kyren?
I think it's Kyren for me, but like it's strange. I might I'm not really going out of my way to get. Oh, that's not true. I am going out of my way to get Saquon Barkley. I think if you're playing multiple lineups, you have to play a Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Malik Neighbors line.
Love it.
And I will as well in my 150 set. I'm not getting to a bunch of Saquon Barkley one-offs. I prefer honestly just the other chalky running backs to Kyren Williams. Cooper Kupp potentially, probably being out hurts the Rams offense, but we're going to get more Kyren Williams in our lineups, which doesn't necessarily make sense.
Right.
So I prefer the other, I prefer Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard for the price, Bijan Robinson, Kenny Walker, to the Kyren Williams, of the chalky running backs.
That makes a ton of sense. One more question from Ann too, John. I like this one for you because you're not as into this game and you weren't very into the Dolphins either. But if you had to pick between Andy Dalton and Tyler Huntley, let's just assume you have them stacked, right? Andy Dalton or Tyler Huntley, let's say DraftKings. You have a preference?
Probably Huntley. And they do have about the same, it's a good question because teams have about
pretty
the same
similar
implied point total. And Dalton and Huntley are about the same price. I'd go with the rushing upside of Huntley, and they're kind of had more time to ramp him up. We forget I was at the Miami Tennessee game. He looked awful, but I mean, yeah, he had signed earlier that week. So
he was better than Levis. He was better than Levis.
That's true. Yeah. But yeah, so I probably prefer Tyler Huntley to Andy Dalton. I think if I'm playing the Washington Carolina game, I want to get to the quarterback that's got the 30 plus implied point total.
Fair. Daniel Jones over both of them? Jones over. Okay. Neil, what about that? I had Daniel Jones to your mix. Those three. I think those 3-point quarterbacks are super interesting for this slate. We'll get to more of them, but there's a lot of cheapish guys, and I think it is a real decision, right? Do I go up and get Jaden Daniels, or do I do the right Dalton on the other side, or Huntley, or whatever? What's your preference on that trio, specifically that trio of quarterbacks?
Yeah, Andy Dalton would be number one for me. So we're way on a different page today. It's kind of funny. I feel like we're often pretty in line, but today I'm just into that game. So it's going to be Andy Dalton number one for me. Probably then Daniel Jones, and then Huntley last for me. Which I understand the Huntley love. It's a nice matchup. We haven't seen it yet. He can run a bit, so I get it. But I think just he's last for me. Just has been so bad this year, and I think Andy Dalton he hasn't been amazing, but he's had some pretty good games, and he has not had a matchup like this yet. So yeah, it's just going to be Andy Dalton for me.
Full disclosure, I have Daniel Jones to Malik Neighbors in my
I like that too.
Dummy right now. So as much as I'm hyping up maybe some of these other guys, let's just say I've not been one to get away from Daniel Jones whenever I could possibly play. Daniel Jones, Sam Howell, pick all the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. I like to play them when they're in pretty good spots. Let's talk about. There's some good questions in here, so I just want to talk about a few of these, and maybe this will segue us into another game. So Nico Collins on IR, and OK asked about whether you would play Tank Dell or Brandon Ayuk. Neil, do you have a preference on that? And then we can talk a little bit about Texans-Packers, because I think that's a pretty fun game, not necessarily generating a ton of ownership.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tank Dell today. I think I listed him as like my favorite contrarian play in the expert survey. So it's an easy one for me. I like Tank Dell quite a bit better. Without Nico Collins, just the target share has been significantly better. It actually wasn't 2 weeks ago that much better, but then last week we saw the big spike from Tank Dell. I think he's going to be a little bit closer to what we saw last year and hasn't really done it yet. He is 6,500, so it's not like he's cheap. But yeah, I think to me, it's Tank Dell all day over Brandon Ayuk.
John?
Yeah, I think it's Tank Dell. I think he's probably my favorite player from that game, like from the Houston Green Bay game. And it's not a game I'm getting to a ton of, but yeah, I think Tank Dell is like too cheap.
So talk about why maybe you're not getting to a ton of this one. We got obviously Packers are back at full strength essentially. So I understand, but it does feel a little bit like, two really good offenses, maybe not the best, this isn't the Washington defense and the Carolina defense, two pretty good defenses, but on the Texans side, it's a little more concentrated now without Nico Collins. Is there any particular reason you're not getting to just prioritizing the Jeffersons of the world, or is there something about the game you're a little less interested in?
Yeah, I think it should be a good game, and I think the teams are good. It doesn't have as high a total as the Detroit Minnesota game, and so I'd rather go there. It's not that I have anything against the game. It's appropriately priced. Like a lot of the players are just like appropriately priced, and so I want like either bargains or I want like huge upside. I don't know that it's a game where anybody's going to go out and get like 3 touchdowns, but I can see that from Justin Jefferson. Or even I can see him on Ross St. Brown putting up like 14 receptions, 100 something yards and a touchdown. So I'm prioritizing the Detroit Minnesota game, but that's like leaving me just like not getting back to the Houston Green Bay game as much.
All right, Neil, let's keep this cage match going because you love Tank Dell and John doesn't love him as much. So I'm loving this. This is fun. A little bit of not major disagreement, but sell us on Tank, Diggs, Stroud, whatever you like in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the Tank side of that just because he's a little bit cheaper than Diggs, a little bit tougher to pay off Diggs' price tag. I don't hate Diggs. I think 7,700. He's just a little bit more expensive than I would like to pay.
Kind of crazy, yeah.
Dell is mostly a one-off. I'm not playing any CJ Stroud, so it really is just mostly a Dell one-off, but also Dalton Schultz, I should point out. He's 4,200. His target share was significantly better last year than it was earlier this year. And we've seen it come back to where it was, even better than where it was last year with Nico Collins out this year. So Dalton Schultz to me looks pretty good. But yeah, it's mostly just Schultz, Dell, a little bit of Mixon for me as well on the Houston side. And then on the Green Bay side, I think I do have more interest again, just because it's been a little bit of a pass funnel as is. And now we're missing several pieces of the defense for Houston. So it's just, they're missing rookie Kamari Latimer. They're missing a safety. I'm forgetting. Jimmy Ward is out. So we've got some pieces missing in that Houston defense. I already think that, Green Bay's offense is pretty solid and not getting a ton of ownership. So I do think that it's kind of a fun contrarian stack. I'm going to have some Jordan Love, and it's going to be, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, I think looks pretty good. Dontavian Wicks is in, so it is still kind of a crowded receiving core once again, but I think you can always go to Jaden Reed, obviously, and I think Christian Watson kind of interesting as well. So yeah, on the other side of this one, I do think I'm going to have a good amount of this game, and by a good amount, I don't mean in the same sense that I have like Carolina, Washington. It's not like a huge priority for me, but I'm going to take some shots on the Green Bay stack with a Tank Dell bring back.
I also toss. I don't love the price, but any tight end who can. You mentioned Dalton Schultz. I do like as well. Pretty nice target boost without Nico last week. But Tucker Kraft, kind of has the huge game as mega chalk at what, $1,000 cheaper than this or whatever it was. And then does what every tight end does, right? And has down games. He's not going to break a 60-yard touchdown every single week. But to our red zone player, to the tight end, the Kittle type tight ends who can actually break, like, it doesn't have to be, no offense, Zach Ertz, catch and fall down in the end zone. Tucker Kraft can make something happen. And if you don't want to choose, between you want to play Jordan Love and you're like, you tell me which of the 5 receivers I have to choose from, you can play, I think, a tight end and then maybe do Tank as a bring back to that stack. Keeps you open to the Jeffersons and such of the world if you want to play those guys. So I like that one a good bit. He'll avoid Derek Stingley as well to get our hand in the dirt on our Texans defensive players. He doesn't have to worry about that. Another early game that I think is pretty darn appealing that we should talk about is Seattle and Atlanta. John, I'm struggling with this one as well. It's similar to the Washington Carolina thing where I see Atlanta, and you've seen what the Seattle defense has been doing for weeks. They talk about injuries with the Texans defense. Seattle is ravaged. They weren't good to begin with, and they're ravaged by injuries. I think they're like sneaky close to the level of that Panthers Washington level defense. They're just maybe not being treated as such. We have the weird kind of backfield split. You have Drake London, who looks good / fine to me, but Kirk Cousins is never a guy you really want to play. Kyle Pitts is never, it's one of those similar things where I want to target Seattle, but how do I do it? What are you doing with Atlanta and Seattle?
Yeah, this game was actually getting a lot of ownership, I think, earlier in the week, and it's maybe like died down a little bit as we've gotten like the injury, kind of fill-ins. That's just like the way that the pricing has gone as we get like more, I guess, Rams into our lineups. I like the game. I don't know if I want to play like Drake London as the highest owned wide receiver, one of the highest owned wide receivers. Like, he's fine, but yeah, I think Atlanta is up there with Detroit and Minnesota in the top 5 receptions allowed per game. I actually like the idea of like playing maybe Jackson Smith and Jigba from this game, maybe at an equal rate to Drake London, but I'm going to be probably have a lot of stacks of this game. I want to maybe be under the field on like one-offs from the game, if that makes sense. But I do like Bijan Robinson. I don't know if he's going to see as high ownership as we're projecting, just because like people are maybe a little bit down on him. I think he had like 95 yards last game. And if he had just like 5 more yards, then he would have like put up a much better score on both FanDuel and DraftKings that now have the 100-yard bonus. The Tyler Algier thing is a concern, but it's, I don't know, like maybe it shouldn't be as much of a concern as it is. I think Bijan has the best touchdown odds on the slate today. And I don't think that people are necessarily going to go there as much as like our projected ownership, just because people are maybe a little bit down on.
I think that makes a ton of sense, although I fully admit, Neil, to bias, because Tyler Algier is my guy. I have not even like a used Kia. I have like a brand new fucking hasn't been driven Kia on Tyler Algier in the best ball streets. So this is fun, but I kind of agree with John that like the Bijan shine has worn off after a big game from Tyler Algier last week. What do you think about Falcons and Seahawks?
Yeah, I prefer the Falcon side of the game just in general. I'll have some Seahawks one-offs. I don't think I'm stacking any Geno Smith just because he's kind of chalky. And I understand it, but I just don't love it when Geno Smith is going to be this chalky and there are other options that I prefer. So probably not going to Geno Smith at all, but I will have some Kirk Cousins just up at 6,300. I'll have some Bijan. I think you're right. Like Bijan, not particularly chalky. I'm not too afraid of the Tyler Algier stuff. They haven't. I mean, they've been clearly splitting, and I have like some concerns about Bijan. He has a hamstring and a hip, or I forget what the second injury is, but a little bit banged up. It's a little bit scary with Bijan. But because you remember 2 weeks ago when he was just like replaced in the fourth quarter and overtime, it's like, oh, yep, we can't run him out there anymore. But he did have a pretty good game last time out. I think that he is in play, not like a huge priority for me, but at 7,100, I think he's going to be in my player pool. At least I'll have a few shares of Bijan. I will have a good amount of Drake London, and I know you called him fine, and I think that's probably fair given the ownership. He is the highest projected wide receiver in terms of ownership on the slate. So I understand not really wanting to jam Drake London, but I currently have 25%, so just a little bit underweight to where I think the field is going to come in, and I think I'm comfortable with that. I think he's just good enough, gets enough volume that I'm okay with it. Darnell Mooney, I think, is a pretty solid value play at 5,600 on a slate where we're kind of lacking a ton of great value. I guess kind of mid-range price, but I think the price is fine. He projects pretty well, point per dollar. I'll have some Darnell Mooney. I don't think I'm going to go to Ray McLeod. You certainly could at 4,400. He's in play. And then Kyle Pitts. I mean, this is if you look at schedule adjusted stats, it's a great spot for tight ends. So I think 4,500 Kyle Pitts is in play for me. I've never said that before, and I've never been stung by Kyle Pitts in the past. So I'll just keep on not being stung by Kyle Pitts and going back there.
He even caught a long one last week and can't, make it the final 10 yards.
Yeah,
into it. This is the Kyle. Even when he is you're like, oh, 2 long catches already, he finishes with 9 fantasy points. Yeah, it's the Kyle Pitts experience. But again, call me Charlie Brown, whatever. I kind of like him. I think that this game has some potential fireworks. I'm a little worried about the Seattle side, but like some of the stuff that John alluded to. They're kind of funneling things to some wide receivers. We didn't even mention DK Metcalf, who I think is a pretty phenomenal tournament play on this slate in the same game with a similar enough role to Drake London for $100 cheaper on the other side. We know DK Metcalf, to talk about red zone players. I mean, he scored a long touchdown last week. It got called back, but he's scoring long touchdowns constantly. So I just want to shout him out. Anything else, John, on this game?
Just I might have come off as a little bit down on Drake London. I think he's fine as
we get it.
Expecting him to be the highest owned wide receiver on the
yeah.
So I may not have as much of him as the field. So but I do. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate. I might be a little bit under the field if he is the highest owned wide receiver.
What about Ken Walker or Neil mentioned Darnell Mooney, but any of the ancillary guys and anything on Ken Walker for you, John?
Actually, I do like Kenny Walker. He's got the birthday narrative, but I prefer the fact that he's catching passes this year narrative.
Flu game.
Yeah, I think he's very
too.
much in play. And I think he got 8 receptions last game. I love Kenny Walker.
He is, Neil, I can't believe it, but when they're playing from behind, he's out there, and Geno's a check down artist, man. Geno will absolutely check it down, and Ken Walker is benefiting from that. So I think he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. What do you think about Walker?
Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of Kenneth Walker. I was really just waiting and hoping for him to be out so I could just slam Zach Charbonnet at relatively low ownership, but didn't work out that way. I'm okay with it. I'm just going to have a ton of Kenneth Walker. I think he looks great. He's going to be one of my highest owned running backs. Hope that the field is afraid of the illness, and I'm all lean into it.
I like him quite a bit. Could make for an interesting little, if people play the Bijan side of things and the London side of things, you can do the Seattle side at a little cheap, Ken Walker, DK Metcalf. Just quickly, so they played 6 games. The Atlanta Falcons have the fewest amount of rushing yards they've allowed in a game was last week to said Carolina Panthers with 114. The Tampa Bay Bucks ran for 160. The Eagles, sure, but ran for almost 200. The Steelers ran for 140 yards. The defense on Atlanta is kind of holding up, but also kind of not holding up. So this game looks pretty fun as well. A matchup, John, that we definitely need to talk about, but I'm not sure there's going to be much talking. But the most fun up there with Vikings Lions is Chiefs and the 49ers, another late afternoon game. So if we're thinking about late swaps, we should probably talk about this one. We tried out Justin Jefferson and he scores 8 fantasy points, and we got Kyren and whoever in the afternoon games. Who do we swap to? It might have to be some guys in this game. So but 6K Kareem Hunt makes me feel gross. A chalky Juju Smith-Schuster makes me feel pretty gross, but it's 49ers Chiefs. What do you got on this one?
Yeah, I think Juju is probably my highest owned player from this game. I think it's a game that's gonna be really competitive. I don't know. I was thinking earlier that the Chiefs play some weird fantasy game where they just try to put up more points than the opposing team they're playing, rather than trying to run up the scoreboard, which is it's almost like they're missing the point of the whole exercise. So yeah, I do think Juju is underpriced at 4,000. So yeah, I mean, I know he could be really stepping into a big role here. assuming that he's healthy. So I think he's probably my favorite 4K wide receiver. But I don't think everything in this game is too expensive for me for the chances of it actually being like a total fireworks show. And then again, the Chiefs are not that offense now that are just putting up a ton of points. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back as well. Yeah, so like I don't know. I don't want to play like a split backfield that could be like Kareem Hunt, Carson Steele, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like we don't know. I don't know what who's going to be getting the carries there. Of course, it was Sean Tucker last week that that went absolutely berserk. But for the most part, I'm not playing a ton of this game. I don't mind some Patrick Mahomes like Travis Kelce stacks, or a Patrick Mahomes like Juju Smith-Schuster stack, but that's going to be more of like I'll probably have like a Mahomes, Smith-Schuster, Brandon Ayuk thing in my 150 set, and a handful of lineups from this game, but it's just not my favorite game.
I will say, Neil, the interesting part to me outside of Juju, and interesting is the word I'll use for Juju, not much more than interesting, but that's bias, fully admitting bias. But both the tight ends in this game look pretty appealing, not necessarily like matchup wise or projection wise or whatever, but Kelce has stepped up in terms of volume without Rashee Rice, and George Kittle has just been freaking awesome for fantasy all year. It's like nobody ever plays him. The Niners defense isn't as good. They have to pass a lot more. He's been really awesome. What do you think about those two guys? And then, anything else Juju wise or other Niners, et cetera?
Yeah, totally with you on the tight ends. I think George Kittle looks great. You just look at the games tight ends have had against Kansas City, and it's such a small sample size. I don't really want to lean into the schedule adjusted fantasy points to tight end stuff, but man, they have been just crushed by tight ends in some games this year. Mike Gesicki had a huge game against Kansas City. I'm forgetting some. We've had some huge ones. Isaiah Likely week 1, just like that. Teams have just crushed tight ends have crushed Kansas City. Again, small sample size, not reading too much into it, but I do think George Kittle is he's always, one of those boom bust players. Kansas City obviously not going to be able to stop every player on the Niners. So I think George Kittle, because of the position and the price tag, like you can just see the big spike week potential, like him quite a bit. Going to be overweight to the field, also coming in at like sub 7% ownership, I believe. Travis Kelce, I think the field is right around 10%, and I'm probably matching that on Travis Kelce. Not a place I want to take a huge stand, but yeah, just he's been awesome in terms of usage. The past couple of weeks without Rashee Rice has been a target hog. I think that continues. It is clearly October, and I am frightened of how much I'm on the opposite side of John on these things. Like I really don't love being opposite John so frequently like I am this morning, but Juju Smith-Schuster to me is like the worst play of the slate. I hate Juju Smith-Schuster today. If he's going to be chalky at 4,000, I'm like, I'm not going to play a chalky Juju Smith-Schuster. I feel like he is, getting a ton of ownership, not even like a full route participant last week. He had 8 targets last week. He had 0 the week prior to that though, or the last game they played. So maybe he does step in and take on that Rashee Rice role. I just don't think that he's really capable of it. I'm honestly, I say this and I don't love it because I know a lot of sharp people like John are into Juju Smith-Schuster, but I'm hoping that Andy Reid is going to come out of the bye and find, scheme up looks for Xavier Worthy or his better players instead of going back to Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think Juju is going to be maybe a full fade for me, and it is terrifying. Like I think that John could be right that he just does take on, he's not going to be Rashee Rice, obviously he doesn't have that skill set, but like take on a big enough role that 4,000 will look too cheap in a couple weeks. But I'm not there on Juju today.
Yeah, I totally understand all sides of Juju. He did step into a bigger role. Rashee Rice is gone. He kind of looks like Rashee Rice, like body type wise, except he's slow. Rashee Rice is fast. I just look. It's like the Najee, right? We've talked about the Najee. Like if Najee beats me, like chalky Najee right against Indy. I'll wave the white flag. I'll hold that L if a chalky Najee. I don't think Juju is physically capable of like stone cold burying you. It is the Chiefs, and Antu says hard to beat a KC wide receiver at 4K. That's kind of true, but like we haven't been playing Justin Watson. You haven't even cared if you had Xavier Worthy at 4K for weeks now. It's just the guy who happens to break a long one. We can't do this, right? It's not fair to single out the one play. Juju's long catch. The defender fell down. Like it's not like he got open. It just was one of those fluky things that happens, and that's part of being with Patrick Mahomes and everything. But if I lose to Juju, I'll lose to Juju. I'm comfortable with that. Multiple questions about the Browns, which also makes me feel from leading in from Juju Smith-Schuster to Cleveland Browns, especially without Amari Cooper, makes me feel a little queasy. But Chris asked about David Njoku, who I do kind of like a little bit today. John, are the Browns so bad that we can't play them against another horrible defense in the Cincinnati Bengals, even after they traded Amari Cooper? Jerome Ford is out. Nick Chubb is probably on a pitch count. Are you playing any Browns, or are they just too bad?
Actually, I'm glad you went there next. I saw Jameis Winston is inactive. Like, they are really going all in on Deshaun Watson. like they don't even want to have to think about it. I don't know. I'm kind of glad. So like the Browns were the like chalk value plays kind of midweek. And now like I think Cooper Kupp likely being out kind of elevates like Parkinson over Njoku and like Whittington over I don't know Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. I think this game for me is a 150 set game, not who knows? I mean, they were going all in on Deshaun Watson as they have multiple times in the past few years. But so maybe, right? This is like a million maker play for me, not a like core part. I'm not putting any money behind Deshaun Watson that I expect to see again. But I'll put some in my million maker 150 set.
That is a phenomenal way to put it. I'm putting some money in there, but I just assume that we've washed it down the drain. I will say another Galaxy brain. This slate's pretty wide open, right? And Jamar Chase, pretty capable of big games. Just a couple of weeks ago, the old Burrow double stack was the stack you needed. And now I don't expect them to be pushed like they were pushed by the Ravens at all, of course. So maybe it's not the Burrow doubles, but like now you have this really easy path to a fairly cheap Njoku on the other side, whether it's Judy or I don't know, Pierre Strong or whatever. Like there's guys on the other side. I tagged as another 3K wide receiver. Like this is a 1 in 150 thing. I tagged him just to say, hey, by the way, he's going to run a lot of the routes, but it's Cedric Tillman on the Brown side. I could see him just catching a long one. He's kind of that type player. Anything on this one for you other than kind of the similar Neil, other than John and I braining our donation to charity here in a couple hours?
Yeah, I mean, Njoku obviously looks pretty good. I'm going to have a good amount of Njoku. Just 4,100 should be a target hog here. I'm not going to any Deshaun Watson himself. Honestly, I was hoping in playing Browns receivers that it was going to be Jameis Winston coming in at halftime and they would thrive with Jameis Winston. I did not love to see the Jameis
Winston. Bobby Boucher moment.
Yeah, so I don't love that it really is Deshaun Watson. We're relying on Deshaun Watson for all of these fantasy points. But yeah, I think many fine Galaxy brain plays for the Browns. I'm not going to the stack because I just cannot believe in Deshaun Watson at this point. But against this Bengals defense, everybody a little bit too cheap for their roles with Amari Cooper gone. It feels like you should be able to find something. So I'm going to be mixing in a little bit of Jerry Jeudy, a little bit of Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, but David Njoku is the only Browns player that I'm going to have any significant volume of. And I will have a good amount of David Njoku, just kind of maybe sprinkle in a little bit of the rest of the receivers, because it feels like they can't all fail, right? Against the Bengals at these price tags, somebody's got to score some fantasy points.
One would think.
I could be wrong with Deshaun Watson there, though.
It's bad. If you ignore the vibes and how bad Deshaun Watson is, that's you just look at it and you're like, what do you mean? They're probably going to have to throw. Like the defense, it has not been, the Bengals did fine against the Giants without Neighbors last week, but even then the Giants kind of moved the ball up and down the field. It's a good spot. It's just how do we factor in Deshaun is totally cooked and the vibes are so bad that like these guys don't even want to play for the I don't know how to factor that in. David Njoku could catch 10 balls for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns today, or he could catch 2 balls for 8 yards, and I would absolutely not be surprised on either end. We've covered most of these games, but I did want to talk about another similarly chalky just one player. this is not the chalky player, but Mason Rudolph is starting for the Titans over Will Levis. I don't know if that gives you more hope for the Titans or not, but Tyjae Spears is out. And we should probably talk about Tony Pollard in this situation, because on one hand, a lot of volume, right? Tony Pollard's been pretty good this year. The Titans run game has been pretty good. The Bills are exploitable in the run game, but this is like kind of Browns level offense. The Titans are kind of on that level. They're resorting to Mason Rudolph. So John, what are you doing with the chalky Tony Pollard?
Yeah, I actually like Pollard this week. We played a lot of Tony Pollard last week, and Tyjae Spears was active. And the Bills give up the second most yards per carry in the NFL. And yeah, there's no Tyjae Spears. It's obviously I think the Titans have the lowest implied point total on the slate, so that's a concern. But I mean, I don't know. He's too cheap. He's like very comparable to Chuba Hubbard. I'm having a hard time like differentiating the two. Like if I'm playing Jaden Daniels, I maybe prefer Chuba Hubbard. They probably prefer Tony Pollard overall, just because like he could get a ton of work. Like the Bills' rush defense is the weakness there. So yeah, I like Pollard. It doesn't feel great like that because like if he doesn't catch any passes, doesn't score a touchdown, it's gonna feel like gross. And there's a good chance he doesn't score a touchdown just because like the Titans might not score a touchdown. But I don't know. Like he's too cheap considering there's no Tyjae Spears. So he's a guy that I actually kind of want to get over the field on. I think like him and Chuba are probably going to be like two of my higher owned running backs.
What about you, Neil, with Pollard?
Yeah, it looks like I'm coming in close to the field at this point. I think I actually listed him as the player that I'm most terrified of fading in the expert survey, and I might come in close to the field on Pollard. Like all the points that John made are the reasons. Like the Bills are it's a run funnel defense, should have more volume, or already a pretty good volume, should have more volume without Tyjae Spears in there. Mason Rudolph, like theoretically, can't hurt at the very least relative to Will Levis. Like I don't think Mason Rudolph is this awesome upgrade, but he's better than Will Levis, that's for sure. So, or at least I think so. So that doesn't hurt Tony Pollard at the very least. So I think he's a fine play. I can't really poke too many holes in Tony Pollard. Not going anywhere else, I don't think, from the Tennessee side. Actually, I don't think I'm going for anywhere else in this game.
No pushback from me. For anybody curious, I was just reading earlier this morning, Amari is going to play, but he, not a full route tree. I think it just muddies up everything on the Buffalo side. Ray Davis is good to go. James Cook, it's a mess. The Bills and the Titans matchup is not particularly good. So I think we all kind of agree it's mostly Tony Pollard or bust in this one. If you can afford, I guess, the Bills defense, but I'm not even sure. The Titans could be down 28-0. I'm not sure they want to throw the ball even 25 times in this game. So not so sure about that one, but let's hit, we got about 15 minutes or so, 15 minutes before the crunch time folks come in. A bunch of good questions in the chat. As I mentioned at the top, keep your questions coming. This is perfect timing. We actually have covered almost everything and just about every game, so we can hit some of these more these questions you guys have and some of these hot button issues, and we'll hand it off to the crunch time stuff. Somebody said before, I tried to verify this. Somebody said in the chat, you guys in the chat, some of you, you're killing me on Sunday morning. Somebody mentioned McNichols because Austin Eckler has a family emergency, and if he does, I sure as hell can't find it. So
I went and looked for it, and I saw what I saw was Austin Eckler posting
tweeting
half an hour ago, being like, "Yeah, ready to go."
Game
So
day.
yeah, I think it's made up.
When I looked, it was 30 minutes ago, and Austin Eckler had posted game day on. Cousin works in the command. Okay, well, maybe Eckler's handler has. I'm pulling out the Will Ferrell GIF for you on this one, Mark. I don't believe you. Maybe you do. Maybe it's true, but we'll see. Just keep an eye on it. But we already talked before, kind of like planning around some late swap around Eckler. So maybe that's a little higher priority because I put my tinfoil hat on this morning during this show. Joe asked about core plays for the week. I don't want to cover all necessarily all of those. You can check those. We've kind of talked about a lot of them over the course of the show. You can always check those every single week with RotoGrinders Premium. You can find them in the expert survey. You can find them in Lineup HQ tags. John writes an article every week. There's shows and everything. We're trying to cover just about everything here, but you should, over the course of the show, been able to hit a lot of the key points. Let's talk about tight end just a little bit more because there's a couple we haven't covered that have been brought up in the chat. One, Grant Calcaterra, which that's a great like if you had to put a poster boy for this slate, I feel like Grant Calcaterra is probably Grant Calcaterra and Jalen Coker. Like there's way too much discussion about these kind of guys on this slate, which tells you everything. Dallas Goedert out. There is, of course, Colby Parkinson and Calcaterra. Not a lot that's super appealing at the low tight end spot. And Calcaterra is certainly not going to be sneaky, John. What are you doing with 3,200 backup Eagles tight end?
Yeah, I'm playing some of them. It's like not a priority. I'm probably going to play too much of it because he's going to like pop up in like lineups. You know, you like use lineup HQ. I don't know. I think he's okay. I'm kind of glad we've got some more tight end values. It's just an ugly position. But like Calcaterra has as good a chance of anybody as being like the value guy that you want. Really, the only tight end I'm going out of my way to get is Brock Bowers. I guess maybe some like Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, but like just a little bit in my 150 lineups. I don't know. Yeah, Calcaterra, like he's kind of fits in there with Njoku and Colby Parkinson as guys that could get a handful of receptions and some yardage.
Pray for a touchdown. What do you think about Calcaterra? And then, let's talk about Brock Bowers, because I agree with John that he's certainly the one kind of priority tight end that we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, I'm with you both on Calcaterra. I currently have 0. If I run another crunch, I might get a couple shares and just eat it. Like I'm fine with it in a game stack, but not a huge priority for me. Brock Bowers, yeah, obviously looks great. I'm with you. I'm going after. So glad to be back on the same page as John on some of these takes. Yeah, Brock Bowers, just an awesome spot for Brock Bowers. No Jacoby Myers, obviously Devontae Adams gone, and awesome matchup with the Rams, one of the best possible matchups. So yeah, I'm into Brock Bowers. I currently have 40%. I'm leaning into it. I like it quite a bit. I think, and I have some Kelce and some George Kittle, so I'm paying up several places. And I think I'm just avoiding. I kind of cut off most of the value options to pay up for some of these tight ends. I guess the same mistake I made in best ball all summer, paying up a tight end. But Brock Bowers is going to be a big part of it.
Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid. Yeah, that was fun. It felt good when you posted the screenshot to Twitter, and that's about how the screenshots will feel this morning, I guess, when Calcaterra goes crazy. But there's going to be a lot of Jalen Coker and Trey Tucker and stuff in the lineups today. If we're spending up for Justin Jefferson and we're spending up for tight end and Jaden Daniels. Any other running backs? I want to talk about just some running backs. We kind of hit the major guys in each of those games. We kind of talked about not really wanting the Lions wide receivers and the Lions running backs and the Vikings running backs. But you mentioned Joe Mixon, a little bit, Neil. But is there just anybody, John, that we've kind of missed at the running back position that you're playing?
I don't think so. I think basically sticking to the guys that we discussed. I think like in terms of guys like maybe like one-offs, like Trey Sermon is a little cheap. And I think if you're playing one of those like Miami, if you're playing like Huntley, you can play like Trey Sermon from that game. Oh, I guess maybe Nick Chubb is a guy that's got a pretty wide range of outcomes. Like it wouldn't be crazy if he just gets more work than we're expecting. Jerome Ford is out, so like Nick Chubb maybe like a guy you want to take a flyer on.
Yeah. What about both of I'm glad that John brought up both of those. Jonathan Taylor is out, and Trey Sermon was a little limited in practice. I admittedly had the fingers crossed for a Tyler Goodson week. I love a good chalky 11 points out of my RB2, but not going to get that. But I don't love Trey Sermon, but I can see it. The Dolphins defense is bad, and then the Browns, same thing. Good matchup for the Browns, but what do we do with the running backs? Are you doing anything with those, Neil?
So I'm not current. I don't have any of Trey Sermon or Tyler Goodson. I am a little bit afraid of it just because really, really run funnel, like Miami, like a top end run funnel defense. So I get it. I just I don't really believe in the talent. I don't know. It again scares me a little bit, but I don't think I'm going there with the Colts. I guess, I was talking about Austin Eckler being kind of the low end of what I might pay for at running back. I guess these are guys that you like, they're definitely viable at, 55 and 5,400. So you can certainly make a case for them if you have that much money left over. I think that they are totally fine plays. I like the idea of going Goodson over Sermon, coming in a little bit lower owned because we haven't really seen it yet with Goodson. So I think that is interesting. I don't think I'm going to get there. I'm also not getting to Nick Chubb, but I think that is actually a pretty strong play. I'm probably not going to adjust my lineups at this point. But 6,000 for Nick Chubb, I think that's a good call out from John, because he could just be more used than we're anticipating. It's a nice matchup with Cincinnati. Like there are certainly reasons to be optimistic about Nick Chubb. And I know John's not saying like, I think he's going to have 25 carries. Like you're saying, like there's a wide range of outcomes we don't really know. And he is Nick Chubb, probably not going to be the old Nick Chubb coming back from injury in his first game back. Like I think he's going to be slowed, but he's Nick Chubb. He's a freak. He's got a great matchup with Cincinnati rival. So I could kind of see it, and nobody's going to play him. So I get it. I don't think I'm going there, but I could see it.
The running back I like, shout out Mr. Richard. Only other one that I really wanted to mention is on the opposite side of this game. If we think the Browns are this disaster and they don't have Amari Cooper, and we're not even excited about playing any of these guys without Amari against the Bengals, well, the Bengals are going to win then, right? Using that logic. And Chase Brown has started to take over more of the backfield there. I don't feel like super confident in the fact that he's taken over, so because like they did go right back to him after he fumbled. So Zach Moss is fumbling, then Chase Brown fumbles, and I'm like, damn it, they're like he lost his chance. They're going to go back to Zach Moss, but they went back to Chase Brown and he scored a touchdown thereafter last week. I think it's possible that they turn over, kind of like, do you guys remember when Mixon and P. Ryan were in Cincinnati? I think it could turn into a little bit of that, where Moss is like the traditional, long down and distance pass protecting back, and Chase Brown is kind of the Joe Mixon, like 20 carries, a few targets, and is the go-to guy. So I like Chase Brown a good bit. Same price as Austin Eckler. If you're thinking about that, obviously one's an early game and one's an afternoon game. Eric in the chat has been waiting for all the Chubb. So he's with you on Nick Chubb. I don't know if I can get there, but I can see it. I understand. I want to talk about a couple of like maybe more galaxy brain stacks even than we've talked about here, which is kind of crazy because we talked about some galaxy brain stuff. I wanted to toss out Aiden O'Connell as an option if we really like Brock Bowers, and we really like Trey Tucker, and we really like Jordan Whittington, and we really like Kyron Williams. Like theoretically, there's going to be a bunch of points in this one. Any AOC for you, or similar kind of, not necessarily core guys, John, but 1 in 150s or any other stacks that we missed?
No, actually, yeah, I do have some Aiden O'Connell, and it was funny because I kind of got to it the same way where I'm like, running lineups and I'm, setting stacking rules. I'm like, I'm getting a lot of Aiden O'Connell. I'm like, actually, that kind of makes sense because we're playing a lot of Rams guys, and we're playing, the Raiders are missing their receiving core. So yeah, Trey Tucker and Brock Bowers. It makes sense. If I'm playing like an Aiden O'Connell lineup, like I'm playing, Bowers or Tucker or both, and with a Ram, but I'm more excited about whatever other game stack I'm fitting into the rest of the lineup. But that's how you're getting Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the same kind of lineup. So
yep.
It's not terrible. I don't know. I'm playing some AOC.
Neil,
I am accidentally playing some AOC. Also, kind of the same way, where it's like I didn't set it out. Like I do a game by game breakdown, and I tell people like these are all the players that I plan on playing this weekend. And AOC was not one of those players. I think there are enough other spots that I have a lot more interest in. And then I look at my lineups and I'm like, yep, I've got a few lineups of AOC, and I'm not going to cut them out because again, he's only 4,800. Great matchup with the Rams. I'm not playing him because I want to play AOC, but I like his receivers enough. And I also don't think that he had some pretty big games last year, late in the year. He actually had some like slate winning type games. So yeah, in this matchup, hard to really say that it's a terrible play. Probably too late to update my game by game write up to say I'm actually playing a little bit of this guy, and I don't really feel that I need to. But yeah, I'm actually going to get a few shares there.
Yeah, we're digging deep. We're getting into AOC. Mason Rudolph's getting a shout in the chat. I think that's when it's time to stop talking about quarterbacks. But we're actually running really good on time. I want to. We don't generally talk about this, so I want to talk about defenses. Because I actually kind of find normally it's like look, I'll be honest with you. I just played the chalk Bucks last week, but then other weeks I'm like I don't want to play the chalky defense, and some weeks there's a bunch of options. Some weeks there's not a lot of options, and I feel like the not a lot is the one I'm feeling this week. So I'm just generally curious if you guys have anything like standing out to you on the defensive side. Neil, go ahead first.
Yeah, so I'm kind of, I think, probably playing the chalk. I didn't really do anything. I usually just basically cut off, like, this is the most I will have of any defense. Here, set some randomness, and then just whatever I get. I don't spend a lot of time on it. So I'm playing the Bengals in a good amount. The Rams, when I'm not playing AOC, look pretty good. The Browns actually too, and they were one that when I was hand building, I actually put in some Browns, just 2,500. And I know I like, Joe Burrow's pretty good, but they're 2,500. They're a good defense, so for that price, I'll take some Browns. The Bills look good against even against Mason Rudolph. Maybe not quite as good as Will Levis, but still a pretty strong spot for the Bills. One defense that I'm not getting to in the optimizer that I did actually when I was handbuilding, put them in a bit, is the Vikings. I think it's, home game, Jared Goff, can turn the ball over. So sort of interested in the Vikings, maybe even Detroit just a little bit, probably not as much, but the Vikings are kind of the contrarian defense that I like.
Any defense, John?
I do exactly what Neil said. Just I basically set a path. It did strike me today that we don't actually have any kind of super chalky defense.
Yeah.
I like the Bills, but they're the most expensive, I think, or they're up there, and I don't like spending up for a defense. Like I'm playing some Titans defense because I'm playing a lot of Tony Pollard, and they're 2,300. There's nothing that particularly stands out to me, and it's such a random variant position where. People say, this team's got a killer defense, but it doesn't necessarily matter for their fantasy score. In fact, it often goes the opposite way, where the team's got a killer defense, the other team's just going to maybe run the ball. There's going to be fewer plays. The opposing team's going to have fewer plays because the other team has a good defense, and so it hurts their fantasy score.
Yep. I'll just shout a couple more additions. So I like the Lions actually a decent bit. If Hutchinson were playing, maybe I'd like them quite a bit more. As good as Darnold and the Vikings have been, they have been taking sacks. They have been turning the ball over a little bit. So I don't hate that one. And then both Packers and Texans, quite frankly, in that game, a similar one where the Packers defense has been gnarly. Look at their turn. Not right now, when you guys get done watching Crunch Time and everything, just quickly pull up the Football Reference page or whatever for the Packers defense. It's nuts. Their one safety or whatever has 7 takeaways already by himself. I think both teams will have to throw it quite a bit. And as good as Jordan Love is, he likes to wing it around like a madman occasionally. And then the Giants look pretty popular as similar to the Titans thing. People are just punting with the Giants, which I think is fine. All right, we got to bring in the Crunch Time folks here. But first, we got to give our tournament winning take, our GPP Final Take, what's going to be in the tournament winning lineups today. John, you go first. We'll let Neil go last.
So, yeah, actually, it was difficult for me this week to think of somebody. I want to go with Justin Jefferson. I think he's the best play of the slate, but that's kind of chalky. I'm going to go with somebody that's still seeing some ownership, but maybe a little bit less. And it was just surprising to me that he's got the best odds for a touchdown today. Bijan Robinson playing in that high total game. I like the idea that people are going to maybe shy away from him. I heard probably more negative stuff about Bijan this week than I heard positive stuff. But he protects very well in a high total game. I don't know. Yeah, Bijan Robinson.
I got no problem with that. And how do we afford, as everybody probably could have guessed, who mine is going to be, the former FCS All-American at Holy Cross wide receiver Jalen Coker of the Carolina Panthers. Not to belabor, you guys have apparently all heard more Jalen Coker propaganda this week than is necessary across the space. But he was actually, I think, a pretty good prospect. And he's buried Jonathan Mingo. He's out targeting the other guys other than Deontay on a per route basis, and became nearly a full-time player last week. And I think he does become a full-time player this week. And he's $3,000 against Washington. So sign me up for somebody who might be good and might run all the routes when his team's going to throw 45 times. So I'm in on that. What do you think, Neil?
I'm going to try to box John into building us a Jaden Daniels stack, into a full game stack at least. So I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin. I love the game environment. I think that is a game that I'm leaning into, and John builds our lineups for us. So now that we have 2 pieces of that game, John, how are you going to avoid it?
I already built our lineup.
Oh,
I'll tell you, that does have Jalen Coker, and it doesn't have Terry McLaurin, but it does have a Washington wide receiver.
All right, good.
So I'll give you that.
I love it. All right, let's bring in crunch time, and we'll close out our GPP final takes with some better takes than my Jalen Coker from these folks. What's going on, guys? This has been a difficult slate to talk about. We normally don't hit every single player in the player pool, but Kristi, this week I think the three of us had hit every game, every player. We talked about Jalen Coker and Deshaun Watson and all these guys in the first 45 minutes because this slate's kind of tough. What are you really, really leaning into today?
Yeah, I was listening, caught the end of your show here too, and I love a lot of your takes. I think this is one of the best slates actually of the year. I think there's a lot of different interesting ways to go to get a little bit different. I'm really high on Justin Jefferson in that Minnesota game too, so I'm with Squirrel this week too. So that's one of my favorites, and a lot of good plays there.
We're aligning, Luuch. Are you aligning with us all on the same path, or are you going down a different one?
Yeah, I'm looking at our FanDuel projected ownership, and I can't believe Bijan is single-digit projected ownership right now. I don't understand it. I know the Tyler Algier looming presence is forever. The stigma is forever going to be attached to Bijan, and maybe the ghost of Arthur Smith. I don't know, but I like that game a lot. So I'm a little light on the Detroit-Minnesota exposure, which I'm a little concerned about. But I guess my take is Jordan Addison 2-touchdown day and maybe not Jefferson. So I'm probably going to be wrong, but we'll see.
I love that. We talk a lot about Justin Jefferson, but you could probably play both of them with Sam Darnold. I think Addison looks good today. Chief, I know you're going to bring the heat with something that's going to make me probably triggered, but what's the Chief take?
Well, it's really very simple. Tyreek Hill's ownership keeps going further down each week.
Oh, yes, I'm in.
And listen, I said it the week before, whenever they were playing, he had 9 targets, 6 catches for 60-something yards and a touchdown, and he's still just always 180-yard catch away from having 20 fantasy points and a half. I'm going to continue to play these Miami guys as long as these prices keep coming down, and him and Jalen Waddle. I mean, I think Waddle had, 8 targets, 7, whatever it was, and he's 5,300. I'm not saying load up on Miami, but I am saying I think these receivers are starting to get really close to nuke button leverage in your scripts. And then outside of that, 2 guys that I really like that I feel like just aren't getting any ownership this week. So, I don't want to say any ownership, but I feel like everybody got off the Seattle-Atlanta game as we just got closer to Sunday. And so I'm looking at JSN and DK, and I know we all want to play Drake London, but I just think this game in general, I've got at least 3 pieces from that game in my main build. And there you have it. That's what I'm planning to do.
I am going to leave it with this because I can't mic drop as well as Javon just did. You guys enjoy this. He said Chief is the Kanye of this show. Take that for whatever you want, and you guys enjoy that for the next 40 minutes.
I don't know if he meant that negatively or positively.
I don't know if it's slow jams Kanye or current Kanye, but I'm hoping it's the former. And we'll get out of here and see you guys next week. Kanye and crew will take you guys up to lock. Peace.
Awesome stuff as always. Yeah, slow jams Kanye was a good era, so we'll go with that. What's up, Kristi? What's up, Will? Good to see you guys.
Great to see you. And I already like Will's hot take on Tyreek. I've got him tagged today too. So look forward to, digging into the slate a bit further, but it's a good start.
I know we're going to go position by position here and I have to do some reads because that's what I have to do. But just so I don't forget, if this isn't the quietest Achane week in history, and I know I know Huntley's doing no favors, but it's his third week, third game. We talked about it Food for Thought earlier this week. They had a bye week. It's the Colts. Yep. I mean, the bottom line is Miami against the Colts, and you want to talk about lack of defensive talent, a ton of injuries, and I guess I'm not shocked because it's been over a month since Achane did anything. But you want to talk about a guy who could break a slate, just like Tyreek or Jalen Waddle. 14 points incoming, right? Here comes the 14 total points Miami's going to score. But I would be surprised if they didn't get into the 20s today some way, somehow. We'll see.
I love A-Chain too, by the way. That's one of my top GPP plays too. And his price is down. I mean, on FanDuel, he's just 6,900, and he was 2K more than that before he got injured. So I like that call a lot. So some good Miami plays sprinkled in there.
I will say I do think FanDuel is a bit more fun this week. It's pretty restrictive, in my opinion, this week, especially like with the way I wanted to approach the slate. I just couldn't quite, in my main build, I just couldn't quite get exactly where I wanted to get against the field. I had to give some concessions that I had to make to like get a lineup I felt comfortable with. But on FanDuel, I felt, I had to give up some of my high-end running backs, but the mid-range was just fine for me. So I'm interested to see how we break this down as we progress. But I do like FanDuel a bit more this week than DraftKings in terms of structure.
All right, let me get through these reads real quick, and then we'll dive into it. Splash Sports, we've been talking about Splash for quite some time here this season. The hottest new DFS site. Great time to join at Splash. Leading in innovation around peer-to-peer fantasy and gaming contests, and they're excited to announce the arrival of their new Quick Picks Pick'em game. Just like any other Pick'em game, you're selecting more or less around different stats and fantasy categories. But unlike other peer-to-peer games, Splash is being more transparent on their payouts than many other sites are. They include the best payouts of 12x, 6x versus 10 and 5 of the other sites, and 4 and 3 pick entries. Man, I tell you what, I've been living in Pennsylvania now for a couple of years. I was bouncing around, and I wish I had access to more of these pick'em sites like Splash Sports. Also, 33% of groups are won by users who don't get a perfect slip, which means that 3 out of 4 picks are often winning 12x to pay out on Splash. Splash is still running lots of Survivor Revival tournaments, as well as pick'em and fantasy tiered contests. Join the community at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders with the promo code ROTO10 for a $10 bonus. And for a limited time, play $20 in quick pick entries, and you'll get an additional $10 bonus. Exclusively for the users who use the ROTO10, you'll get an additional $20 in credits when you play $50 in entries by the end of October. So there's still time to get some good promo bang for your buck over there at Splash. Check it out today and use that promo code ROTO10. And that read felt like an eternity, guys. Sorry about that. Stick with us here. The RG Listener League. Shout out to Old School 45 for taking it down last week. Congratulations. Don't forget to join the fun each week with the RG Listener League. Play alongside other viewers as well as your favorite host for a chance to win a month of RG Combo Premium every week. Check it out. The description. Check our description for an invite to the contest when it goes live on Wednesday. The RG Listener League. Shout out to Old School 45. Congrats on the dub last week. And lastly, RG Combo Lite. Our newest product gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of other tools. Competitors charge hundreds a month for their sim products. Combo Lite, just $39.99. Includes our SimLabs lineup building tool, plus content from some of your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Lite doesn't limit you to one sport. You get the core 4 major sports, MLB, NFL, NBA, and PGA. Bang for your buck. RG Combo Lite, $39.99. Don't want to miss out. I need a breather here, so we're going to just dive right in. Let's talk about quarterbacks. I'll pass the mic over to you first, Chief. What's going on today?
So quarterback was a really tough position for me earlier in the week, and especially even on Friday when we have the blitz. So typically I start hopping into the blitz officially on Thursday. I'll poke around on Wednesday, but I usually start hopping in on Thursday to start getting ready for the show. And I just had too many quarterbacks, I felt like, and it was a little bit hard for me to kind of, trim the fat, if you will. But in the end, I ended up on a few guys that some people are going to play and some other guys that others aren't going to play. So obviously, I think Jaden Daniels is a good quarterback. He's still pulling in a fair amount of ownership, knocking on the door at 15. I don't typically like playing quarterbacks around 15%. However, being a Carolina fan and watching this team just get demolished every week by what feels like every skill position, I just couldn't in good conscience hit the X button. So despite what is typically high ownership for my taste in GPPs, I am getting to some Daniels. I think a guy that I'm getting to that no one is getting to is CJ Stroud. For those of you that have access to the blitz. One of the things that I like to leverage is what they call the blitz game level factors. and it typically just kind of tells you which game should have the fastest pace, run the most plays, so forth and so on. And believe it or not, this is the game. Now it's not leading by like 10 plays or anything. There's some others in there, like Seattle, Atlanta, which I also love, that the ownership has come down. But I just think no one wants to play the Houston Texans when I do feel like the production is a little bit more concentrated. It's Stroud. And I know we're not on the other positions, but it's Stroud, it's Mixon, it's Diggs, it's Dell, and it's Schultz. And while I know that's 5 guys, like it's a lot more easier to pinpoint this production to me with Nico Collins out of the fold. And not to mention, I think this should actually be a game where they might actually get pushed. The Texans could actually be behind in this game at some point if Green Bay gets out and plays well in Lambeau. So I really like Stroud. He's a little bit more expensive than I think people want to play for a lack of rushing ability. But one of the things I've seen from this guy is, I mean, he's pushing 250 to 300 almost every game. At some point, 3 or 4 touchdown passes are coming, and I just want to be ahead of the field. So I like him. Obviously, I like Jordan Love on the other side, who's also not getting a lot of ownership. I like Kirk Cousins. This offense, he's continued to push the ball down the field, and he's thrown it 30, 35, 40, sometimes 50 times. We've seen, that range of outcomes. And this is a game where I feel like Seattle should be able to keep pace. Hopefully they're not a little sluggish. I know they're playing the 1 p.m. game, having to fly across the country. I do expect them to be a little lethargic in the first half, but hopefully the second half they get back rolling. That's a trend that sometimes I don't think we think about. But the West Coast teams typically are a little sluggish to start out when they come to the East Coast. Second half, I think we see some fireworks there. So clearly I'll be playing Geno, like Sam Darnold, going to play Daniel Jones, and then I'm also going to throw in some Tyler Huntley. Maybe I'm just overblowing what I think this Miami offense is going to be, but Tyler Huntley looked better in the second week he was in this offense. We saw more targets funneled to his best skill position wide receivers, and then he had a bye weekend. He gets a matchup with Indianapolis on the fast track. I'm expecting more rushing yards, more passing yards, more production from Tyler Huntley this week. Ultimate mute, brother. Mute count 1.
Wouldn't be a crunch time if one of us wasn't muted at least once. It's usually me, but all I said was, Kristi, take it away. Go for it.
Boy, Chief, I like it. We are on a lot of the same plays, that's for sure. It makes me feel great about this slate. I agree. Jaden Daniels at the top is someone I have a ton of interest in. I think he's a great cash game play too, especially over on FanDuel. I think he's in a great spot for that. Geno Smith, another great cash game play too, really cheap on DraftKings in particular. Like those. Sam Darnold is my favorite, though. He's a guy I have probably the most exposure to. I like that Minnesota game just a ton. Perfect matchup for them. I think we're going to see a lot of fantasy points scored in this game, so I want exposure to Darnold. I also like CJ Stroud. I have him tagged as one of my GPP plays too, Chief. So I like that. I think, that Green Bay Houston game is a sneaky upside tournament game to target. And I like getting exposure to both Jordan Love and CJ Stroud. I think it makes a ton of sense. You mentioned Daniel Jones. I think that's an underrated game too. Philadelphia Giants, super interesting. So I definitely want exposure to Daniel Jones. I also will mention Brock Purdy in that late game there. I think, that Kansas City, San Francisco game is very intriguing to me. And we'll get to that a little bit later when we get on some of the plays. And then the last play I'll just throw out there, coming in at hardly any very low ownership, is Joe Burrow. And you want to get exposure to a guy like that, especially when no one's really talking about him. And I think, both he and Chase have extremely low ownership this week. So those are the guys I'm interested, but Darnold probably checks in as my highest owned QB on the slate.
Yeah, you guys hit it pretty good. So I'm not going to waste any time putting my input in here. Let's move on to running back. And Chief, you mentioned FanDuel. There's just a loaded kind of mid-tier price range here. And, I'm looking at our projected ownership, Barkley, single-digit ownership, obviously the highest price running back. Every narrative under the sun you want today, you can have with Saquon Barkley. Kyren Williams drawing some ownership there too. I mean, I get it. The Rams are heavy favorites. You won't see that too often this season, and Kyren just has super high touchdown equity. Looks like we got a Bijan Robinson projected ownership update since we talked when we came on the show, and it looks like he's coming into like 20% now. So it looks like, that's about right. I mean, you guys talked about that game. I think there's going to be points in that Atlanta game. Squirrel has Bijan tagged. I like him as well. But that range, you go on FanDuel, especially, you go down to like that 7K-ish range with Kenneth Walker. Hubbard has just unquestioned workload. Tony Pollard's popping, Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs looking like they're carrying some ownership as well. So it's a little tough to navigate here when you take everything into consideration, Kristi. So what's on your mind here at the position?
Yeah, there's a lot I like. There's a lot that are really popping in the mid-tier. Chuba Hubbard is a great example. Tony Pollard, but I like him. No Tajay Spears. Good matchup there. So I like those plays a lot. Kyron at the top, I think, is a phenomenal play. Bijan Robinson. But a couple guys, too, where I'm getting just a little bit different. We talked about him. A-Chain in that Miami game. I absolutely love him on FanDuel. This is where it's definitely more of a FanDuel play because he's a little bit priced up more on DraftKings. But I really like it. I could see him scoring a couple touchdowns easily. And so I think one of him or Tyreek is going to have a really big game. And there's, ways to have them both, have nice games, too. But I like A-Chain, the fact that he's at single-digit ownership. Super excited to play him. So that was a great call out there, Luuch. And then Joe Mixon is a guy that's just been getting it done, too. And so we talked a little bit about the Green Bay-Houston game. I like getting some Joe Mixon in there. I also think on the other side, Josh Jacobs is in a sneaky good spot, too. He hasn't done a ton, but I think this is a good game environment for him to do so. So I have interest there. I like Kenneth Walker a lot too, and it'll be interesting to see where his ownership kind of settles out. We've got him at what do we have him at? Just shy of 19% 19% or so. He was questionable with an illness, and we see that he's in, obviously, but I think it's a great spot to get exposure, and so I have a lot of interest in Kenneth Walker as well. Those are kind of the guys that I'm focused on the most. I'd also throw Aaron Jones in there if you're, I like that game a lot. I'm more on the Jefferson side of it, but, I do want to get some exposure to Aaron Jones, especially if there's ways to, him kind of getting some, touchdowns there in the red zone. So don't mind him as well. But those are some of my favorites, with A-Chain being probably my favorite tournament play.
Yeah. I like that you're on him as well. I just think that's such a sneaky play, great price on FanDuel.
Exactly.
And the offense couldn't look much worse than it did like 3 weeks ago.
Exactly.
But, it can't go down any farther, and he's healthy. Also, one more, and our guy Chop called it out on Lineup HQ that finally last week the snap count between Chase Brown and Zach Moss kind of flopped. So it looked like Chase Brown was the one who played 2/3 of the snaps. He's really cheap as well. I think that's interesting. Of course, it's not always appealing when it's kind of a known committee, but it looks like maybe there's a bit of a changing of the guard. And he's the more talented runner, as it should, just the younger guy. So I think Chase Brown is interesting as well. And without further ado, Chief Justice 06, give me the running back breakdown on your end.
Well, let me just say on DraftKings specifically, I'm not really getting to the Chase Browns in that area. I'm pretty much playing everybody Tony Pollard it up. I just felt like those are the guys that I felt most comfortable with in terms of their roles. Pollard 6,300, and then you got, Josh Jacobs at 64. You got Chuba at 65, Aaron Jones at 65, A-Chain at 67, Bijan at 71. Joe Mixon's actually my favorite running back on DraftKings at 7,200. So I felt like that range was where I was most comfortable. I didn't really like I think Chase Brown would be fine. I just kind of didn't get to him today. So on DraftKings, I'm pretty much playing Tony Pollard and up, and that does include, the Barkleys, the Saquons. I'm a little bit lower on Jordan Mason this week, but I probably shouldn't be because I do think, they'll have some shots around the goal line. But that's kind of where I am. But my favorites are the guys that I mentioned. It's definitely Chuba Hubbard. I was about to say Nick Chubb. Definitely Chuba Hubbard. I am gonna. I might get a share or two of Nick Chubb because our resident tournament specialist, SquirrelPatrol, says Nick Chubb could sneakily have some volume today. I agree. I may get him in, but relatively speaking, it's pretty much Pollarded up. Now on FanDuel, it's a little bit different because Chase Brown is a lot closer to $1,000 cheaper than some of these guys. So it's a little bit different for me over there. Like I said, FanDuel Builder I do feel like it's a little bit more advantageous. But like when you're looking at Pollard at 71 and Chubbard at 74, you're getting Chase Brown at 65. Like we're getting closer to $1,000 discount. So I'm there. Same thing for kind of a guy like Devin Singletary, who's coming back, that owned the backfield prior to injury. Maybe Tracy still gets time. I know Dable said he's still going to get some stuff, so we'll see. How do you feel about a guy like Tyler Algier, who, kind of ran it up on Carolina, but has still been getting some volume? I think in tournaments you still keep them sprinkled in. But my favorite on FanDuel is Pollard and Hubbard. On DraftKings, it's Mixon, Pollard, Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, like all those guys kind of in that range. On FanDuel, you're getting these guys at 8K, and there are just so many receivers I want to get. I had to, like I said, make some choices there, but all in all, that's who I like.
Kenneth Walker's birthday today, so
yep.
It is.
He's in Atlanta. Oh, he was at the club last night. He's not sick. He was at Magic City with Lou Williams probably or something. I'm connecting the dots here. I need that Brian Windhurst.
Lemon pepper barbecue wings were everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, come on. He has an illness. I'm sure he does. Man, he might run for 200 yards now. I don't know. We'll see. But that's kind of funny. Good breakdown. Let's move on to wide receiver. We got about 12:39 Eastern here, so we'll get through these positions.
Can I mention?
Yeah.
Mention one more, Luuch, that I forgot. Kareem Hunt over on DraftKings at 6K. I do have a little bit of exposure to him too. Getting exposure to the Chiefs side of it. I just thought he was interesting. He's priced up over on FanDuel, but just wanted to mention him as well.
Yeah, I mean, he stepped right in and he's been the guy. It's been unbelievable. RIP to my Carson Steele shares from a month or two ago, but he just was not effective as a runner. I guess that was kind of predictable, but it was a fun thought while it lasted. Anyway, on to wide receiver. Just a loaded slate, really, just difficult to navigate. Justin Jefferson, Kristi, we'll start there. And I know you're high in that game. A lot of expert blips there in lineup HQ, and yours is one of them. So, is there any reason to not have this guy in your player pool?
No, there really isn't. I just think this could be a game that he really explodes this week, and we could just see. And he's also had a great history against Detroit. If you look at the numbers, he's scored touchdowns, put up big yards. So I think today is the day, and still no TJ Hawkinson. So it's just him and Addison getting a lot of looks. So I'm definitely overweight on Jefferson, and think he's probably one of the top plays on the slate for sure on the receiver side.
Yeah, and Chief and I talked about this earlier this week. I'm so fascinated to watch this game and just see the approach that Brian Flores and that Vikings defense takes. You watch a lot of Minnesota football. I know you do. And just the way he's rolling his coverages pre-snap and doing all these exotic things. That's why CJ Stroud looked terrible. It just such a clever scheme. It's so sophisticated that I feel like this is going to be a really interesting chess match. And I want to see Ben Johnson whip something together here, and it's going to be really fun to watch. Who else do you like here? There's a lot of expert tags at the high end of the wide receivers on lineup HQ.
Yeah, exactly. On the tournament side, we talked about him a little bit earlier, but I definitely love Tyreek, just because single digit ownership. He almost had 2 touchdowns in the game before they had a bye week. So, one was overthrown, one was underthrown. So I think getting exposure to someone like him is obviously very good for tournaments. I do like Drake London. He's going to be one of the more popular guys on the slate. And I agree. I think it's good. I'm maybe a little bit under him than the field is, but he is someone that I like. I like Kirk Cousins in that game too. Tank Dell is a guy I like quite a bit too on the Houston side. He's got a good price. And like Chief mentioned, we really know a lot more with, Nico Collins being out. It's he and Diggs getting a lot of the targets there. So I like that. He's someone I have exposure to. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a great play too. He's really cheap over on FanDuel at just 6.1K. So he's a guy that I like quite a bit. Since we're talking about FanDuel, I would throw out a guy like George Pickens. I think sometimes you forget the night game slate a little bit that FanDuel's doing. And so I think he's a fine play, somebody cheap. Jordan Addison, getting back to that Minnesota game, wouldn't surprise me if he has a couple touchdowns, and he's priced reasonably. I have a couple of tournament stacks that I have where I've just, done an overstack on that game and then throwing in like, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams. I like the Jameson Williams a little bit better just because you do get a little bit discount and he's got, home run upside there too. So I like him quite a bit. I also like Deebo Samuel. I do have him tagged. He's hardly carrying any ownership at all, but they just utilize him in so many different ways. And he's only 7K on DraftKings. I really like him over there. So he's a good tournament play as well. I think if you're looking to save money, I love Juju Smith-Schuster over on DraftKings at just 4K. I think a smart play over there. And then Noah Brown, I think if you're looking to save some money too, don't mind that with Washington pairing him with Jaden Daniels. So I think that's someone that's really good too. I think those are the guys that I have the most exposure to. I'd also throw Malik Neighbors in there. I think, you want exposure to that game, and I think it's a good one. And I think pairing him, in that Giants Philadelphia game is a good one. So I have quite a bit of him in my pool too. Those are probably my favorites, but Justin Jefferson certainly leads the way with Tyreek, probably one of my favorite tournament plays.
Yeah, gotta love the volume that Neighbors has had and include concussion protocols. Seems like a full go as far as everything that they're willing to tell us, and I don't see a reason not to, be high on Malik Neighbors. Detroit playing the 4th most man coverage this season, so there should be some opportunities for those Vikings receivers. So just going to be a fun game to watch, Chief. Talk to me about wide receiver here.
So, I pretty much like everything that Kristi talked about. I did want to mention, like, Deontay Johnson is still getting serious volume. And, I expect that this game should have some scoring. Like, one of the things outside of one game, Andy Dalton's thrown for about 220 plus in most of these games, at least one touchdown. And his number one target has been Deontay Johnson. No question about it. So I did want to mention him kind of on the low end there in that 7K range. Some other guys that maybe are some secondary receivers, since I know we talked about a lot of the main ones. Everybody's playing London. I've been a Darnell Mooney guy this season because he just, he's been getting pretty good volume. So I like him in that Atlanta game. Same thing on the other side, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's been another guy that's gotten some serious volume, in a few of these games. I mean, some of these games he's seen 12 targets. And if this Atlanta offense comes out firing like I think they are, because they've kind of secretly, this offense is taking off like a rocket ship. They just keep scoring 30 points and nobody notices it, and we don't play them. But, I think if this team is going to score 30 points, Seattle's going to have to find ways to do that. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is one of those options. On FanDuel, where Malik Neighbors is a little bit more expensive, I'm not sure exactly how much people are going to get to him, but he's seen as much volume as this is 2018 Devontae Adams, pretty much, which is what Malik Neighbors is getting in terms of volume. So on the high end, I actually really like him today. And then not to mention, I know my good friend Luuch will often talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. And just as much as I like Neighbors, the grown man himself, A.J. Brown, just keeps getting it done week after week after week. He comes back over 100, a touch. It's just, I think some of these other big name guys are going overlooked this week because of some of the higher total games. And a guy like A.J. Brown, as we saw last week, could be a slate breaker and no one plays him at all. And it's looking like he's on the lower end of ownership this week on the top end. And so I definitely want to get him in as well.
I got 2 quick talking points I want to poll my co-hosts here on. And if you're hand building on FanDuel, you have 2 $6,100 receivers whose names start with J and then an S in the last name, and they're hyphenated and long. And I almost put Juju in my lineup instead of JSN. I'm tinkering around here earlier this morning. But that being said, maybe it's not a bad accident. Obviously Juju had a big game and was heavily involved. What do you guys think on his role in the Chiefs offense? What are your expectations on him? You have any takes?
I'm not expecting over 100 yards, but I am expecting, I would say 6 to 8 targets would be reasonable. I don't think he's Rashee Rice, but I also don't think his production is suddenly going to fall off a cliff when they didn't go and sign anyone. I mean, Amari Cooper went to Buffalo and Devontae Adams went to the Jets. So nothing has changed about their wide receiver situation. They're going to have to throw it to somebody, and they don't seem to be wanting to throw it to Watson. They throw it to Noah Gray at tight end 2 or 3 times a game. Kelsey's probably getting 10 targets. Hunt will get a handful of targets. Xavier Worthy, I think, got 6 targets in the last game. I think he's more of a 4 to 5 target guy, and they'll just get it to him, randomly. I think Juju's got a stable 6 to 8 targets in his offense, and that means at 4K on DraftKings, that's enough for me. I know you were asking about FanDuel at 6,100, so I get it. But on DraftKings where he's 4K, in that offense, what should be a competitive game, I think he gets work.
Just for time purposes here, Kristi, my second question, and you have him tagged in lineup HQs. What are your expectations for Jerry Jeudy today?
Yeah, I just like him because of his price, and just because, taking Cooper out of that, Njoku is going to be very highly owned, I think, on the tight end side when we get to him, just because of his price point. But I've always, liked Judy's talent, watched a lot of him playing for the Broncos, and I think this is his opportunity to get some more targets and kind of showcase what he's doing. And so it's purely a price play for me, but I do have interest in him. But on the Juju side, I absolutely like that. And I think it's a tough call between him and JSN over on FanDuel, and then throw Pickens in there. There's 3 kind of right in that range that are all looking pretty good.
We got about 10 minutes, so I know we have to motor through this. We're going to skip defense, but if you guys have defense questions, throw them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. Tight end. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw what Njoku was wearing during his pregame entrance. He went full cowboy. What a getup! I don't know how you don't play David Njoku now. The Browns. There it is, my guy Devin.
That is awesome.
The aura.
Oh, dang!
Oh, that's screaming. 8 targets, 4 of them uncatchable.
Right?
From Deshaun Watson, maybe a touchdown. Good Lord, Chief. What do you think of the fit here? Since you're Kanye and he's big in fashion, if you're the Kanye of the show, how do you rate this fit here by our guy Njoku?
Well, I mean, I would prefer to put on an undershirt, but I don't know why these athletes like to do this. I mean, the statement is the outfit, but I mean, he's embarrassing me with the abs. So throw a shirt on, my guy. I'm just kidding, but I mean, if he's coming into Cleveland like this, I mean, Cleveland should be a lot colder than where I am. Ice up, son, as Steve Smith used to say, and that's what he's looking like. Let's see if that translates. So here's the big thing. We've got the NBA coming up. I know we're talking about NFL. I think in the NBA, that would have been our good forward friend from the Washington Wizards, which would have been Kyle Kuzma. That's a Kyle Kuzma outfit. He wears some wonky stuff like that. At any rate, get as much Njoku as you can. Looks like he's about to ride the horse into the end zone.
Give me your lightning round picks for tight end, Chief, and then I'll throw it over to Kristi just so we can get to some questions here.
I think it's very simple at tight end this week. If you're going cheap, I think you're going down to Njoku. I actually think, Kyle Pitts is good. And if you're going all the way cheap on DraftKings, I personally think it's Juju Smith. I don't think you can go wrong with any of Kelsey, Kittle, Bowers. I don't think you go wrong with any of those guys. I personally, in my DraftKings main build, I do have Pitts. Hint, I'm on the Atlanta-Seattle game. But on FanDuel, no, I'm actually going double tight end in my main lineup with Kelsey and Bowers, and I don't think you'll see that at all. Hopefully, I can slide past some people in the millie on that one.
All right, Kristi, give me your thoughts on tight end here.
I do think it's interesting. I do think the double tight end build is very, very interesting this week. There's some good plays. I like Kelsey. Bowers is probably one of my favorites if paying up. Think he's awesome. I do think Njoku, who we talked about, makes a great value play, especially over on FanDuel. Kyle Pitts, I like him too. Just in that game environment, we've talked about that quite a bit. I'd throw Zach Ertz in there if looking to save some money. Pairing him with Daniels. Calcaterra is getting some love with Goddard being out. Don't mind it. I think getting to some of those guys, I don't especially have a strong take on any of those guys, but I think if you're looking to save money, they're good. A guy that gets overlooked quite a bit and has been doing really well is Kittle, going back to that San Francisco game environment there. So I like Kittle quite a bit. But yeah, Kittle, Kelsey, and Bowers at the top. And then Njoku is probably one of my favorite value plays along with Pitts.
I like it. I'm going to get to some questions. We're hitting the Discord first. Are Barkley and AJ Brown okay in Daniel Jones' neighbors lineups? That's a lot of salary. I'm not Sure. Can you play them together? First of all, can you play Barkley and AJ together, like theoretically, or no?
On DraftKings?
Yes.
Oh, I think that's tight, man. If you're doing that, those are probably your big spins.
So one or the other is perfectly fine,
Yeah,
but two is tough together. Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. They're all great plays. The salary makes it tight, and you need them to score 40 points probably, with them scoring maybe 2 each at their price points, that kind of thing. Do you like Jordan Whittington in cash games, Kristi, at all?
I don't for cash. For tournaments, I do. But yeah, I haven't found him in any of my cash game lineups.
Okay. Chief, what's your favorite single entry quarterback receiver stack on FanDuel? If you had to pick one.
It was Cousins, London, and I think it's going to stay there. I'm going to say Cousins, London. Everybody's playing London. Nobody's playing Cousins.
Let's see. FanDuel cash question, Kristi. Tony Pollard or Breece Hall?
I've got Pollard.
Yeah, me too.
Are 3 Rams in cash too much?
Yeah, I haven't found myself in any of those builds with 3 Rams in there. Yeah, there's probably ways it could work, but I haven't found that in my cash game lineups.
Okay. FanDuel cash. Chief, Kyron and Malik Neighbors or Kenneth Walker and Justin Jefferson? Woo.
Oh, that I hate to not answer your question. That feels pretty equal to me. If I had to, I'm going to use the injury tiebreaker and say Kenneth Walker just gets injured too much for me. So give me Kyron Neighbors, but that's my tiebreaker. I really think those two are equal.
Last piece of a DK single entry. Would you rather have Njoku and the Rams defense, Kristi, or Kyle Pitts and the Vikings defense?
I'd go Pitts and the Vikings defense. I think Vikings defense is a little bit sneaky, actually.
Okay. Chief, who's your favorite low-owned quarterback that could break this thing today on DraftKings?
Low-owned on DraftKings. Give me Daniel Jones.
All right. I am going to try to shoot through some of these YouTube questions and sifting through the bots. FanDuel single entry, Josh Downs or JSN, Kristi?
JSN for me.
FanDuel top 2 running backs. Who are your favorites? No context, Chief. Just who are your favorite 2 running backs today on FanDuel?
Pollard and Chuba Hubbard.
Any love for Matt Stafford in tournaments, Kristi?
For tournaments, yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on Austin Eckler today with Brian Robinson coming back, Chief?
Not getting too much.
Matt in the chat asked Kareem Hunt at 6K. Kristi says, yeah, let's get a little bit of Kareem Hunt today. No problem with that. Stafford Cup stack, a lot of Rams chatter. Any interest?
Cup's not. I don't think Cup's going to play for what it's worth.
So
it could be Whittington. It's cheap. You know, I mean, they're heavy favorites. It's very cheap. Let's see. Is Trey Tucker viable in cash? Someone in Discord asked me. I just can't trust the guy personally. But what do you think about Trey Tucker, Kristi?
Yeah, I exactly. He's a little bit more, untrustworthy, I guess, for cash. But I do like him for tournaments quite a bit. But haven't found him in any of my cash builds.
Yeah, tournament play super fast. Like could break a slate. Yep, but tough to trust. AJ Brown or Debo on FanDuel? Kristi, you mentioned Debo, so I'll stick right here. Which one do you like?
Yeah, they're both great. I'm leaning with Debo just slightly, but I think they're both awesome tournament plays.
All right, Chief, I got a 3v3 for you. Daniel Jones, Chuba Hubbard, and Kyle Pitts, or Sam Darnold, Tony Pollard, and Njoku? Daniel Jones, Chuba, Pitts, Darnold, Pollard, and Njoku. Justin Jefferson and Neighborson are on both teams.
Darnold, Pollard, and Njoku.
All right. Eckler, Amari Cooper, or JSN and Jameson Williams, Kristi?
One of those.
2v2, yeah. Eckler and
2v2.
Amari Cooper or JSN JMO?
I'd go JSN JMO.
Okay, I'm assuming one of them was a flex play. FanDuel Cash, Parkinson or Njoku?
Probably Njoku.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so.
Njoku or Whittington, Kristi, on FanDuel?
I'd probably go Whittington actually with Cup to be out. Yeah.
Okay, there's another Njoku Parkinson.
I'm assuming that was a flex play.
That's what I'm assuming since it's exactly.
Giants defense or Titans defense on FanDuel, Kristi, if you had to pick one.
I'm going Giants, but
Listen, I'm
but
with
Titans
you,
are
Kristi.
interesting too. Are you? Okay, good.
I'm with you on Giants because listen, Jalen Hurts' turnover woes have not
See,
ended.
that's just it. Exactly.
They have not ended. I think there's a couple sacks and a turnover at least.
I think so
Giants.
too.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker or Joe Mixon for high dollar stuff, Chief.
DK, right? Got to be on DK.
Yes, DK. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Joe Mixon hands up. Joe Mixon is actually my favorite play on FanDuel today. On DraftKings at 72.
Kyron or Mixon on FanDuel. How about that one?
I think Mixon's 84. Is Kyron 89?
No, he's 86, I believe.
He's 86.
So on FanDuel, I probably go Kyron, believe it or not.
Yeah.
All right. Tim Patrick or Elijah Moore. That's gross clicks, but man, we're digging deep. I love it. Who do you like if you had to pick one? Tim Patrick or Elijah Moore on DraftKings?
I don't think the big Tim Patrick game's coming again. Give me Elijah Moore with
That's what I would say too. Yep.
Kareem Hunt or Austin Eckler?
Kareem Hunt for me.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. I'm authentic in the chat, says he'll take you up on that Vikings defense. So, yeah, I mean, Brian Flores, we talked about him a lot.
Exactly. And they've been great all year. Just because they have a tough matchup against Detroit doesn't mean that they can't get the job done. So I like Vikings, Steve.
I mean, we know what's going on in the landscape of defenses and DFS now. You can give up 25 points and return the pick
right.
the pick, then they're fine. So
yep.
So do you have any like Vikings defenses in your stacks with that game? Do you approach it like that, or do you kind of separate like Vikings defense from those stacks?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll just kind of wait and see. I'll build my lineup and kind of see where I land and see if I'm anywhere close to that. But I do have, Vikings, Giants are probably two of my higher owned defenses over on FanDuel in particular.
Okay. I think we just hit lock, and I think I hit mostly of everything. I apologize if I missed anything, sifting through the bots here, and we did some yapping, but I feel like it was good yapping earlier in the show. So we appreciate everyone for sticking with us here. Let's go watch some football. Does anybody want to offer me a real hot take before we head out of here? What do we got here? What's the hottest take you got, Chief?
Okay, this one's real hot. Now, hot, guys got to remember, hot means unlikely but possible. Tyler Huntley, 220 yards passing, 50 yards rushing, 1 rushing touchdown, 2 passing touchdowns. To pair that with Tyreek, $120, 6 catches, and a touchdown.
I mean, it's possible. You're right.
Spicy but possible. See, I didn't even really go high. 220 passing, 2 passing.
Reasonable. You're a reasonable man.
50 on the ground and a rushing touchdown. And if that happens, folks, Tyler Huntley might be in the middle. He just might.
Kristi, give me a hot take. How do you follow that?
My hot take, sticking with that same game, I think either A-Chain or Tyreek is going to have 3 touchdowns. One of them is going to have 3 touchdowns.
Woo!
Well, maybe 1 or 2 will be leaving out of the slot for cheap purposes, But
exactly. But yeah, go Miami.
Let's watch some football. Thank you all for sticking with us. For everyone on the shows before us, did a fantastic job. I was tuning in earlier, and for Devin, our guy producing the show. Thank you, Devin, for everything that you do, and for Chief and Kristi. I am Justin. We'll see you next week.